Yes, that's good, people. Good evening. Good evening. Good night, however you want to say it. Hope you all are doing well. It is 8:50, Wednesday, 17th of August. So yeah, man, time is flying. It's half of the year already gone. So roll on the next half of the year, man. I'm telling you. But hope you all are doing well. For those who are listening live, listening on the playback, please make sure that you like the stream, share the stream, subscribe if you are new. Please let me know for all those who are listening that my audio is coming through clearly. So let me know whether you can hear myself. I'm hearing myself cool on my end, but as always, you know how these things are when it comes to YouTube. So one thing I do want to say before I get into tonight's topic is for all those who have been affected by the floods, again, I do thoughts, prayers, sympathies out for all of you. I've been seeing the weather, how it's changed drastically from heat waves to thunderstorms and just pretty much almost floods in certain parts of the nation. So thoughts out to all of you. But I will say this for me personally, and this is just me. Thank God for the rain. I'm telling you, thank God for the rain, man. I do like the heat, but I'm telling you, man, sometimes the heat can just get, even for me, bro, a little bit excessive. So yeah, heat is always nice, but for some odd reason, it just doesn't agree with my body at this moment in time. So yeah, um, thank God for the rain. It's a lot cooler, which is really, really good. So when things are cool, things are a heck of a lot better. What I'm going to do right now, let me just start into the stream. Again, for those who are listening on the playback, please make sure you like the stream, share the stream, subscribe if you are new. But the question I wanted to ask today, this is came off the back of a live stream that I was. Well, actually, I lied. This has been kind of a recurring theme from a lot of conversations that I've had, a lot of things which I've listened to, and a lot of people that really there's an overarching feeling about this, and there's just an overarching hate and disdain for the West and just the modern day world. Whenever you type in modern day this, modern day that, you just hear loads of streams, loads of people just complaining about everything and anything related to the West. And I'm just like this. Really? Really? I really want to sort of unpack my thoughts. Because again, this is all about these are my thoughts. So this is how I perceive the world. This is how I'm viewing the world. And I'm just looking at when I listen to certain people talking about, oh, the West is this, the West is that, the UK is this, it's finished, it's all this kind of other stuff, or we need to leave, go somewhere else. I'm like, okay, fair enough then. But when I look at things, and this is my perspective, is where would you go? Where would you go and why would you go? Because this is my humble opinion. I mean, listen, I can't be hypocritical. I do criticize the West. I do criticize the UK. I do criticize the history, some things that's going on, the double talk, the hypocrisy. Don't get me wrong. I can't lie and say I don't criticize. I do criticize. But one thing I won't go as far to say at this present time in 2022, there is no other place I would rather be born or rather be living than here. That's just my thoughts on it. I mean, you can go down the list and I'm going to pick out a few things. And if you compare them to non Western worlds, there is no comparison on anything. No comparison on anything. There's only one place that you want to be. And this is the reason why I kind of get a little bit not confused, but I understand why they say it. But then I'm like, there's a reason why you say it. Manchester boy, big up, bro. Hope you're doing well today. Or should I say this evening? Obviously, your team's rocking up the Premiership right now. 2 wins out of 2. You guys normally slow starters, but you guys are looking strong already, even after the Community Shield. I was a bit surprised by that, but hopefully we'll have challenges other than Man City to keep you guys occupied. But you guys are definitely the favourites to win the league again. No surprise there. But yeah, so when it comes to the West, when it comes to criticizing everything about the West, the first thing I always hear and the first thing I always notice is always people, or it's always people who are born in the West who look at things from an outside perspective. And sometimes I think, do you realize how privileged that we really all are to be here? Let's take, for example, healthcare. Now, healthcare is free at the point of service. So you go to the NHS, you don't have to worry about anything. You don't have to worry about paying for your surgeries when you're there. You don't have to worry about some of the medications that you get. You don't have to worry about a whole heap of things when it comes to medical care, especially when it comes to emergency services. If you have an emergency service, you go in an ambulance, you ain't going to be asked about no bill. You ain't going to be asked about anything. That's number one. So you get these situations where you have all this kinds of, let's be honest, first rate doctors who will attend to your medical needs. Now, from my experience of other nations, this isn't the case, especially when it comes to the non-Western world. I've been in situations, I mean, not too many, but I've been in situations where the waiting time is not the same. If you live in certain parts of the country, if you're living up in the out in the bush, ain't no doctors coming out to you and getting to you that quickly. There's not this sort of emergency services where you can call up and all this kind of other stuff and you get your free medical care. You have to pay for your medical care in some parts of the world. A lot of non-Western, even some of the Western nations. So I'm always thinking to myself, so hold on a second. The first thing that most people do when they assess a place, and this is where we sometimes become a little bit too disingenuous and we criticize just for criticize sake, is what is our standing of living going to be? Number the first thing is normally food, shelter, and health, and that cover healthcare. So when it comes to healthcare, check. I know again, I've been critical of the NHS. There are a lot of things I do not like. There are a lot of changes I would make, but there's no question about it. The NHS and the service itself, it provides a luxury which a lot of people, I guarantee it, if we was to remove the current structure of NHS and make it completely paid for, in terms of point of service, I guarantee a lot of people will be complaining. So I'm just like this. All right, cool. I understand it, but there's no way near I'll trade anything right now in this. Even at my current age, even though knock on wood, I've not had to use the NHS for any sort of real reason except for just normal checkups and just me querying certain things about myself. So touch on wood, I've been lucky and privileged in that respect where I've not had to really utilize the NHS like other people have had to use. So that's one aspect of things. Then we've got other aspects of things such as education. Education is lauded across the world. You know how many people are fighting and begging and pleading to come over here to get an education just to say that they've got a degree from a UK university. You have bare people from China, from the continent, from the Caribbean, from all over the place. And all they're trying to do, because they say, I'm telling you, man, they do, I think they do rip off these foreign students. But when they come over here, all they do is get another degree from another institution because guess what? It's a UK institution, it's lauded, it's prestigious, it's known around the world. So therefore, guess what happens? We have a privilege, a better privilege than other people to have the level of education, the access of education that we have. There's another thing where I really, really get a little bit like, are we complaining for complaining's sake? Or are we too privileged that we can't see exactly what we have right in front of us? Because I'm sorry, but most people, again, I looked at some stats where literacy rates are terrible in some parts of the world, and we take these things for granted. Education, healthcare, even the level of crime waves, even when it comes to corruption, even when it comes to the way how the setup of our nation is. You don't have to worry about some of the things that you have to worry about. I mean, even now, take me for example. I have a privilege as well in my current work to be able to work from home, especially during the pandemic. You know, during the pandemic, it really taught us a few things about how we can really move in life. So a lot of people who used to, I mean, most of us probably used to work in the office 5 days a week. Sometimes I would work from the office 4 days a week and then work from home 1 day a week. But usually speaking, we'll be in the office for the majority of the week. Since the pandemic's come and gone, that has completely revolutionized the way how we work. But that can only happen if we're living in a modern day setting. That only happens if we're living in a nation that has the ability to be, hate using this stupid business speak, agile. Agile and be able for us to move the way how the climate is moving. Now, granted, we were forced into it. It wasn't a case of, we all decided as a unit, it was something imposed based on the law at the time. However, what that did show is just how, for a lot of jobs, not all, I will agree, but for a lot of professions, a lot of jobs nowadays, because a lot of things are white collar jobs, people talk about the IT field, STEM, but even most things now, because we have computers, we have internet, most things now we've proven, do you know what? We actually don't need as many people in the actual offices as we did beforehand. And we're proving that it works. And therefore, guess what? In this modern day world, in this Western world that people complain about, we are now able to be so remote. So beforehand, when it comes to remote working, a lot of times people used to work reasonably close to the area of their workplace, reasonably close. But nowadays, with the work from home culture and how it's really going to progress going forward, I can imagine people you can literally work from pretty much any part of the globe and not miss a beat. I know that people beforehand, before the pandemic, were doing this anyway. They had remote teams. I know I spoke to people who had remote teams in like India and all this kind of other stuff. But I'm telling you, it's almost like the status quo now. It's almost like this is going to be the new norm. And guess what that gives people the ability to be able to do? You know what we call it? That better work-life balance. This is what a lot of people really strive for. And this is, again, another situation where I'm sorry, bro, where else are you going to get this kind of opportunity to do the things that we complain about. I mean, in some nations, they're not even industrialized to a point where they can even do this kind of stuff. But yet and still, we always think, oh, the grass is always greener. This is where kind of the overarching theme of the messages for me. I mean, listen, again, I am not here to say everything is great with what we're doing in the modern day world. I'd be lying. I'd be lying. A lot of things which, just from a culture aspect, and this is probably the biggest thing which I'm going to get into in this later, in which I definitely do have some disagreements with, and I understand why people are saying it. But let's make no bones about it. When people on about moving over to the non-Western world because they hate this and that, they're looking at it from Western perspective because they've got all their finances, all their cash flow, all their basically the exchange rate that they use from being in a nation like the UK, and then they transport it to another nation and think, oh, that's how I'm going to live. So they can live pretty much like a king or a queen in the non-Western world because guess what? They're getting Western wages. And that's a completely different lifestyle than the normal person who lives in that nation. You cannot compare. And I'm sorry, no one can compare this. You can't compare somebody who's been in the UK, worked, saved, then moves over, then in comparison to someone who's been born and bred in a very, very third world poverty stricken nation. You can't compare the two. That person who lives in a third world poverty nation, that person's been living off what? Pence per day, working like, 70, 80 hours per week. I mean, the two things can't even correlate. So a lot of times when I hear the things about, oh, you need to leave, what people misinterpret and what people don't really miss off is what they're actually telling you to do is still have a job in the West while work outside in the non-West. So basically trying to have the best of both worlds. Ideally, having the money that the West provides and then be able to live like a king in the non-Western world and use their money as a privilege to be able to have greater access to homes, greater access to land, greater access to all. Because this is what a lot of people do when when people repatriate, don't they? We save up all their money and they try and live like a king or queen for the rest of their days. No, no shade. That's what most people do. Most people, they would live in a place, try and work back and go back home. But again, that's completely different than actually living in a non-Western nation. It's just completely different. So when people talk about it, I'm like, there's a little bit of things which people seem to want to miss off, conveniently so, to big up the idea of, we hate the West, we don't want to do this. When in actual fact, there's a lot of things that we benefit from the West, which remove it from us. We're going to soon see how much we can complain about. I mean, when I was looking at some documentaries and certain things where, bro, when you see how some people just live from a day-to-day basis, I, I for me, I'm saying this. There's only so much I can complain about when it comes to the Western world. There's only so much I can really criticize because, believe it or not, this is still the best place for us to be living, in my humble opinion. This is still the best place to be living. This is still the best place for people to grow up with. I mean, if you have free access to healthcare, education, access to, even when it comes to legal rights and ramifications and your human rights, that's another aspect of the West which people don't seem to give credit for. We seem to poo-poo it because right now people are, and I will agree, they're taking advantage of human rights. We're taking advantage of the privilege that a lot of people beforehand bled and died for. But it's another thing, human rights. Certain parts of the world, depending on who you are, you cannot you cannot drive, you can't go for an education. There's certain things you cannot do, you cannot move. Even in a foreigner, I was watching, if you're a foreigner in the Philippines, for example, you can't buy houses. A foreigner in the Philippines cannot buy a house or land. It has to be a native. They have to buy lands. So there's certain things which we have human rights records, which other nations they haven't. I want to say track record. There's no track record of human rights. There's certain things which I'm just like, look, I can forego maybe a Tesco's around the corner. I can forgo that. I can live without maybe having Deliveroo. I can live without maybe having certain aspects. But I'm telling you, there's certain basic things which most human beings respect or should respect that I'm just like, I will not go without. And one of them is human rights. It's just human rights is just a basic standard of living, basic standard of care. No one persecutes you for having your certain faith that you have. Sure, people may criticize it. Sure, people may tell you that, we don't agree if you are a different persuasion, but no one's persecuting you for what kind of religion that you are. Same with race. We talk about race a lot, but let's be honest. No one's coming down the streets and persecuting you for dating who you want to date. No one's coming down the street with a pitchfork and trying to stab you for being the way that you are. Bro, that's not happening. This ideology that you're getting persecuted every day just for the color of your skin, a lot of these things are microaggressions. They really are. when the scheme of things, they're microaggressions. They aren't these macroaggressions. They aren't these people with pitchforks. They aren't these people trying to tear down your house. They aren't these people, burn you to a state. They aren't these people with these crosses that they're lighting outside your house. Bro, that's just not the case nowadays. And why do we owe that to? Because in the modern day world, we have pushed forward for, guess what? More inclusivity, more diversity, all the spiel, more representation. We have pushed for a world which people may argue is too inclusive. I'm going to get into that in a second. But we've pushed for a world where now people are complaining because their bellies are full. There's an expression that says that when people's bellies are full, when people are placated, when people are pretty much got it too good, people complain about the stupid crap. People complain about the things which they shouldn't complain about. Whereas the reason why people from non-Western worlds don't complain about these silly, trivial things is because they haven't got food in their bellies. How many adverts do you see on the adverts on the TV where you have stereotyping now some poor African kid or some poor African children, nose all snotty, bee up in the eye, sometimes big belly, crying, and all they're asking for is a pound a week, and that will sort out water, sort out food, so all this kind of other stuff. We all know the classic expression at home when you didn't want to eat your food. Your mom and dad will probably tell you, there's starving kids in Africa. You best eat that, even though me eating or not eating it doesn't make an effect on them. But is what it is. But the point is still the truth. Why are we complaining about this and that? Because our bellies are full, right? These people over there, their bellies ain't full. I mean, if they can't even, they don't got enough strength to even take the flies that are all coming up in their face. You see the stereotypical pictures. We all seen it. We all seen the adverts. We all see, we've got the children aid every single year that's there to support the kids of Africa and all this kind of other stuff. So we get so people, hopefully by now you're not naive to the fact of what actually goes on in the world. So I'm just like this. Look, part of the problem is, part of the reasons why people are so complaining is because, truth be told, we have it too good. I mean, at the end of the day, I can just look at Just Eat, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and I can get food delivered to my door all season round. I don't have to worry about the season of this, season of that nowadays. A lot of that stuff is gone. Certain foods used to be getting season, out of season. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, look, with that being said, why would you forego all that to live in an area, live in a region where the human rights record is well, the record is shaky at best. The corruption is shaky at best. There's so many nations which the corruption is off the roof, bro. You can't do anything there. And it's the next point when it comes to financial freedoms, financial gain. And big up, Joseph David. I have seen your comment, and I'd agree with this. I'd agree that the West does paint a picture that homelands are destitute, not going back to, and that is true. That is part of. I did a topic on this. I think you were there about propaganda and how a lot of propaganda that gets reported and a lot of things that are over exaggerated. But when you look at the statistics in regards to a lot of the continents, especially when it comes to poverty, the poverty line, bro, it ain't even comparable. I mean, we talk about poverty over here, standing of living, and of course, with the increase of prices for petrol and food and fuel and everything that's increasing, and people are being pushed, behind the poverty line. But bro, it's a completely different poverty line than it is over there. You have to agree with that. It's not even comparable. So why it's not all destitute and why it's not all poverty, bro? The poverty over there is something which people, I'm sorry, if they lived a mile in those shoes, or those adults, those families, those children who live in that kind of poverty, there's no question about it. It really is destitute. It's just third world nations. And I not even got into some of the crime rate that happens in some of those third world nations, but I've been seeing of late, where you have, again, rape, murder, stabbing, killings, just a daily basis. And I'm just like, you really rushing to go live in a place like that? Really, bro? Really? I mean, you really rushing to go forego all pretty much your citizenship? All right, well, this is the thing as well, isn't it? People don't want to forego their passport. This is another thing which kills me the most. You're British when you're ready, and then you're something else when you're not ready, because we know exactly, guess what? We know what time it is. We really do know what time it is. So I always find it funny how people are struggling and striving to try and go somewhere else where, in reality, this is the truth now. There's a reason why people are risking their life and limb on dinghies to get over here. There's a reason why. There's just a reason why. It's not because, they're silly fools who don't understand what's going on. It's not because these guys don't know what time it is. It's not because these people here are just completely oblivious to the fact because they don't have access to certain things that we think they do, i.e., the internet. Because a lot of them do. Funny enough, a lot of them actually, chucked away their phones, probably for ID purposes. So they aren't completely silly. They do know what time it is. They do know how our life is living over here, not intimately, but they have a great idea. They do understand exactly what the abilities that we have if we play our cards right over here, the privilege that we have, the ability, the access. They do know what time it is. They do, bro. They do know what time it is. So it's just like when I hear. So the funniest thing, or the irony, is this: how is it that a group of people are trying to flee a place or flee to a place where the same people in the actual place who have been living there and born there are trying to reverse and get back to it? So they're trying to come to the UK. We're trying to get to there. Where's the disconnect? Where's the disconnect? So I'm always thinking to myself, when people always criticize the West and criticize the modern day world, bro, it's the modern day world that gave rise to a lot of things that we now take for granted. And the reason why we take it for granted is because, truth be told, if we live a mile or a day in their shoes, if we had the struggle that a lot of these kids have, a lot of these families have had. I mean, some people live, grow up, die in some just horrendous conditions. And yet sometimes I'm thinking to myself, bro, yeah, yeah. I'm living in a place right now where I can say comfortably the things which I do not have to worry about, the things which I go to sleep at night, wake up in the morning. I don't have to worry about my electricity being off and on. I don't have to worry about no generator. I don't, for the most part, have to worry about um water in the tap. I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Whereas these people do. These people have to worry about electricity. These people have to worry about clean water. These people have to worry about electricity not being on all the time. These people have to worry about even criminals coming in trying to thief what they work their socks off for the most part. You know what I mean? It's like there's certain things where when you break down the parts and when you break down exactly what we are living in, again, and this is the part where I will agree with the dissenters, I will agree with this, and this is the main reason why I believe people hate the West: the culture. And I'm going to get into the culture part. This is another fascinating thing. Now, again, a lot of conversations that I've been having in the media, even when I was listening to um, Graham Souness, who was mentioned, commenting on a football game. It's like it's a man's game, and everyone's up in uproar. Twitter was going crazy. Everyone's going crazy because, oh my god, how can you call it a man's game when England's women's team, they won the World Cup, and everyone's getting on it. And it's like, really, really, really. And that's part of the reason why people hate the West, because of the culture that's now pervading over the West. Again, I think the reason why is because our bellies are too full. We've got nothing better to talk about. We have to find offense where there is no offense. And people are complaining because everything, again, part of the culture, we've got cancel culture, we've got the woke culture, we've got the whole, gender culture, everything. It's like there's everything, and everything that just seemed to be a crescendo right now where people are thinking to themselves, bro, there are things which you didn't have to worry about back in the day, which now you have to worry about. You have to kind of worry about calling somebody a he or a she, with their correct pronouns. You have to worry about saying mansplaining as opposed to this. You have to worry about all this kind of other stuff. And it's like if there's this hypocrisy from this side, from that side of the gender argument, and hypocrisy on that side of the gender argument. I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. And I'm not going to disagree with you. There's so much hypocrisy. There's so much BSery. There's so much just PC nature of the world that it's the culture, the underlying culture, what happens in the West, which people do not like. People don't like sometimes the sexual loose culture. People don't like the fact that we have a culture of just violence, degradation, or as I say, glorified violence, because again, the Western world is actually statistically safer than the non-Western world. So that's another sort of point of contention that I kind of have with people talk about, oh, the glamorization of violence. Fair enough. I agree with you there. But a lot of violence happens in a lot of these non-Western nations where I'm just like, bro, the violence is off the chain. Let's be honest, it's just crazy, and people admittedly don't want to go out there. For example, when I went to Jamaica, give us a classic example. One of the things you're always told about when you go to Jamaica is pretty much, especially back in the day, it's not so much now, but even now I get told this: be careful how you dress. Don't necessarily walk out the resort by yourself, or keep walking, because you may encounter a lot of problems. A lot of problems which in the first world you kind of know how to move about with. But they were telling me in Jamaica, and from my family members and all this kind of other stuff, and even my sister when she went to Jamaica when she was very young, about these things that took place. Look, just know where you're at. Just know how they perceive you. Because if they know that you're from the UK, they think they got money number one and you're target number two. Same with other Caribbean nations. It's like they know you're a target. So there's certain things which I'm like, we talk about glamorization of crime and all this kind of other stuff. I'm like, well, a lot of westernized nations, they do have a lot of crime rates. You look at South America, Central America, like Guatemala, Honduras. It's like all these places. Do they glamorize crime? Do they glamorize? We always talk about like drill music, rap music. Do they glamorize that? Why is their crime rate so high? It's just crazy. It's just crazy. In is it the Philippines? The Duarte, the president, he pretty much did a. This is crazy. He pretty much did a on-site killing anyone who's suspected of being a drug dealer, and the murders that were racked up in the Philippines was a sight to behold. Does the Philippines have gangster rap? Does the Philippines have drill music? Do the Philippines have all that kind of stuff? So when I hear some of the cultural complaints about this and that and the other, I'm like, well, we do know we live in a big world. I know it's gone smaller because of social media, but we live in a big world where there's a lot of crime outside of the West, which we really, really don't take into account of. Not to mention corruption crimes, not to mention land theft, not to mention we have all these crimes of people getting thieved because it's a honey trap where I don't know how people get scammed, but scam artists that happen, the typical I'm a Nigerian prince or I'm a Ghanaian prince, all these kind of crimes as well. These are things which again exist in mass that happens outside of the West. That's our little bubble that we seem to complain about. So there's certain cultural things, don't get me wrong, people, I'm never ever gonna disagree with. I have some questions, I have some issues about this whole gender stuff. I have issues about the cancel culture, the woke culture. But even still, even with that culture, that does lead me to kind of a pushback on that. We only have these problems in a society that wants to push forward. And that's kind of the main thing which we miss in all of it. Now, you could argue whether it's actually moving us forward or moving us backwards, but you can't have a conversation about religion in certain nations where it's pretty much by rule, by law, that you cannot blaspheme against a certain religion. You can't do that. You can't have a conversation about gender. You can't have a conversation about social norms. You can't have a conversation about racial norms. You can't have a conversation about the things that we take for granted in certain places. In China, they pretty much ban you from looking at other media. There was a news report I saw with this in Saudi Arabia, where this young lady was pretty much not banned from Twitter, but she was jailed because she had a Twitter account and she was following an activist. I'm like, really? She was jailed for that? In Saudi Arabia, women can't even drive. I think they're trying to have a women's movement just for be able to drive. All these things. I'm like, bro, where are the complaints at? Where's the issues at? Why are we complaining so much about a place where most people would they do risk life and limb to try and get over here. And if they could trade with you in a place, if they could snap their fingers and trade their place, I'm telling you, bro, it ain't even a conversation. They won't even have to think about it. If they could trade shelter, food, warmth, clothes, if they could trade the fact that you guys have running water every single day, electricity, all this kind of other stuff, gas, all the things that we take for granted, bro, I'm telling you, it ain't even a conversation to be had. Ain't even a conversation. So yeah, do not get me wrong. I do have my complaints about the cultural aspects of what goes on over here. I do. I really do. There are a lot of things I don't agree with. I really do. But ultimately, and this is I'm going to drop the link in the chat because I don't want to be talking for too long. So I want to make sure, well, if anyone wants to come up and have their little say on this, I want to make sure that you can all get your say out and see whether you agree with it or not, or just your opinion. Because again, these are all my opinions. If anyone didn't know, for some reason, I have to make a disclaimer. But yeah, if anyone has their own viewpoints on just the Western world and where we are in the UK and how we're living, and by all means, and please come on up. The link is pinned to the top. Let me just take a break and just greet people who's coming to the chat. So KB, evening, bro. Hope you're doing well. Hope you and the families are doing well. Yeah, I mean, Dosa David, I would be really interested to know exactly, since you lived in the UK since 22, then moved to Nigeria. I want to see, since you've been living there for 2 years, then good, bad, yay, nay, would you recommend it? I know there's a lot of problems going on right there, right now, so it may be a little bit biased, but that's the whole point, isn't it? At this moment of time, people say I want to move. So, okay, you've gone from the West to the non-West, where, let's be honest, a lot of Nigerians are moving over here. So you be in a perfect position to be able to give us the playback as to what's good, what's bad, and overall, how's your experience been? Because again, a lot of people are saying, the future is the non-Western world. The West is done. The West is finished. This is fallen. I'm like, fallen how? Fallen where? And this is the next thing as well. For all the fallen nations of Europe, they still pretty much do outrank other nations on all the basic metrics that exist that people hold dear to themselves. I mean, let's be honest. Rome is no longer Rome. Greece is no longer Greek. But let's be honest, a lot of people are still fighting to get to those places. Spain is no longer Spain. You know what I mean? But people are still fighting to get to these places. So, okay, it may not be the numero uno number one place to live in the world. Okay, fine. It may not be even Great Britain. Let's be honest. The British Empire, you know, is pretty much done anyway. Well, it has been done for ages, shall I say. But let no bones about it. UK is still a fantastic place to live, even though it's not been the number one place to be for a long time. Again, we can argue about how it got there. We can argue about the history of colonialism, history of all that kind of good stuff. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you. But even with all that being said, this UK have still got. I'm going to say this in the nicest possible way. I've still got enough sense to make sure that their own people have a standard of living that is pretty much the envy of the world. They still have enough sense to it, and it's not like the UK are blessed with so much natural resources. So the UK, for all its faults, it still managed to have a standard that it's kept throughout. That, let's be honest, people talk about, you know, white people having no culture, which is BSery. White culture is probably the most pervasive culture on planet Earth, especially like British culture, if you realize it, from how we drive on the roads, from our governments, from our regulations, our laws, from science, mathematics, all these things, again, which is like the heartbeat and the lifeblood of the UK, of not the UK, but the world, starts from a lot of these European nations. And again, it just is what it is. I don't know what else you want me to say. Um, Donga, welcome to the stream. What are your thoughts on topic so far? Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Okay, fair enough then. Okay, yep. Okay, fine, 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 fine. All right. So, Donga, what I'll do with that is I'll have a look at it later, just because, yeah, with a bit of a stream and everything like that at all. But yeah, so when it comes to my viewpoints on where I'm living right now and how I see the future, this is because this is the key right now, isn't it? The future and how I see where I'm going, and how things are playing out. I mean, again, I'm privileged to be in a position where I'm able to work remotely from a lot of things that I do. So I do have the ability to be able to choose. But even still, if I was to choose another place to go to, it's still another Western nation. Just because the structure, just because the regulation, just because of the things which, again, you want when you, especially when you have a family. This is the thing when people have families and they move, and this is where um I understand why people risk their lives to go to certain places. When you have family, especially when you have young kids, one of the things you want to always make sure is that your wife, especially if you're a man, or you should do if you're a man, your wife and kids, the first off, are safe. Now, in certain parts of the world, you cannot, I know you can never guarantee this. There's always bad things that happen to bad people anywhere. So I know that's the case. But there's no way that you can, for the most part, ensure or best protect your family unless you are really, really rich in those areas and you have access to gated communities, unless you have access to certain things which the regular person doesn't have. But let's be honest, I don't know how if people got that kind of bread to be doing all that kind of other stuff. So most people live in a nicer place, not necessarily the worst place, but they'll be moving over there. But one thing is you want to make sure that your family is safe, safe from any harm, safe from any terrorism. And safety is not just in terms of physical harm, but also when it comes to healthcare. I was watching a documentary about sickle cell, and they were saying um, a few people were living in Ghana, Nigeria at the time. This was what, 15, 20 years ago. And at the time, it's just like the knowledge of sickle cell was terrible, was not very good, and the healthcare was not good. So basically, their siblings, one of their siblings, had died from it, and it's just like, whew. Now, granted, because of a lot of it, it's gotten a hell of a lot better. But it's just thinking to yourself, man, would that have happened in another place? May not be sickle cell, maybe other things. I hear so many stories of people seem to be going in for, I don't know if it's just they're routinely ill, and for whatever reason they come back come back dead. And I'm just like, would that happen to the same extent in the West like that? Would it really be that serious where the level of healthcare is to a situation where they don't even know, for lack of better words, how to even treat someone? It's just, and this is the thing, when you're moving a family, if you have a family, you're moving out from the West. One of the key things you're looking at is where can I keep my children and my wife safe? Safe from predators in terms of human beings trying to rob, steal, kill because they're jealous. And then also when it comes to healthcare, that's a huge, huge thing. KB, bro, welcome. How you doing?
Good evening, bro. Good evening. You good?
Yeah, man. All live, all live.
Thanks for having me on, bro. I'm very well, thank you. Um, you touched on literally on the point I was going to start on, so great timing. Um, One of the big things is the comparison to things like healthcare, because I think about when my mum talks about being here, because she's been in this country for like 45 plus years at this point. I think she came in when she was like 13, so she's been here no, the majority of her life. She's definitely more British than, let's say, Ghanaian, even though she is a Ghanaian woman, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It does.
And one of the things, like when we talk about, because over the years, her and her siblings, other members of my family have, um, well, one or two actually have done it, but generally overall toyed with the idea of having, that whole ethnic minority dream, have a house in the West, have a house back home, quote
Yeah,
unquote,
yeah, yeah.
you know, and several people, one or two have got properties in and my auntie in particular has got a property in a really nice part of Ghana called East Legon. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of it, but yeah, if you get a chance to look it up, it's kind of like gated community part of Ghana. You see the bigger cars and some of the ex-footballers live in that part. So one of the, the just one of those type of parts of Ghana. So
Yep, yep.
um, that's just the one auntie though, and then most other people haven't. But in relation to it, and particularly like I was talking about my mum and our conversations we had, one of the big things she always brings up is healthcare. Now, this partly might be because she's a retired midwife, so she's very much a NHS person. She joined when she was really young. She's been very much part of that society and the whole thing behind it, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. But one thing she always brings up is things like healthcare. And even with the comparison to like my auntie who lives in Atlanta, in America, they've got a whole weird sort of process with the healthcare and the insurance and stuff.
Yep,
Even
yep.
compared to someone like America, who's a Western country, we have it really good here in the UK just for healthcare alone. Just for the simple fact that, we can literally pick up ourselves and go and see a GP. A&E is there available to go 24 hours, anytime, any day. Um, And yes, we do pay national insurance, we do pay tax, we do contribute to it. So it's not free, but it is readily available. From what I understand, and someone could correct me if I'm wrong, I believe Canada's healthcare system is very similar to ours, but I'm not 100% sure on that. So if someone could clarify or anything, that would be fantastic. Um, but things I don't know alone, when my mum say compares it to, the exact example of my family, Ghana, and don't, I just want to make this clear to in generally on the stream. I can definitely say for somewhere for a country like Ghana, or at least my part of Ghana. My family's from the southern part.
Hmm.
So of my family's Ashantis, or what you may call Akan. And I'm not gonna say my family's like celebrities or anything like that, any ridiculous like that, but they're they're all right. They're doing well. Like, you know what I mean? They're not typically what a lot of people may immediately think of when they think of a African, if you know what I mean.
I
They're
do.
doing
I do.
well. Marty's married to someone in the government. My granddad passed like in 2012, but my grandma still got her houses type thing. So they're all right. But even then, my mum, who's been here, as I said, 40, nearly 50 odd years, showing her age, sorry, mum, um, that she literally was like, I'll never go back. Because
Oh,
we
really? Oh, wow.
yeah, she's gone for vacations. She obviously went back in 2012 when my granddad passed, and things like that. She's gone back on occasion when something's happened or one of my cousins got married and this sort of thing. But um, she would rather finish her life here than go back, because not even just the healthcare, just the general comparison, just the fact of, for example, I bring up members of my family or people my family may know that are more of the well-off people, but the fact of they have to have security, dogs, gated off housing,
Yeah, yeah,
it's almost like they have to prison themselves in.
yeah,
And even so, in that respect, even though they the more higher living standard of Ghanaian, they have to live within our own little family compass,
Little,
if that makes
yeah,
sense.
little bubble enclave where you just boarded off from everyone.
Yeah, because when they're traveling back and forth, when they collect someone from the airport, it's blacked out cars, and it's not like to make a statement. It's because they don't want anyone to clock them. Oh, them lot. Oh, they got money.
Yeah, yeah,
Because and it's not everywhere, and it's not every single part. But even like a big city like Accra or Kumasi, there is certain areas, towns, roads you don't go, or even a lot of the times, like like, so people in Ghana, for example, a lot of the time, if they got a nice car, they got drivers. It's that sort of system, society. If you got money, you got a driver. He'll drive you a nice car for you, and you're in the back.
yeah, yeah.
Like, certain drivers are not even stopping at certain red lights in certain areas because
They know what
you
time it is.
they know what time it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And the worst thing is, and when I've asked my family, my mom, people that's been there, even people about our age that I've sort of visited, and I've been curious because I haven't been there since I was quite young. I've barely been there a couple of times. And last time I went, I was like, a preteen. So it's been a long time. Um, and I've even in my naive English self, yeah, was like, okay, well, I hear the police are merely out there as well, surely, and especially that we've got a bit of name and bit of money, And they said, "What? The police will rob you too?" I said,
You know what? Yeah, I do hear a lot where you have to pay off the police. Sometimes it's just like, bro, you have to, yeah.
"Well, apparently, if you catch the wrong type of police and you come across, if you look like food, for example, on the wrong night,
Ah,
apparently one of the first things they'll ask you for is passport. Why?
right.
Because they want to see what country you're from.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So if they
Try and
see that,
size you up, see how much they can shake from you into it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
they
yeah,
they 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 clock your accent to see, so to
yeah,
see how much of a native you are to there, or so the
yeah.
English boy, or for example in Tree, or Brony boy, they would call you,
Mm.
or American boy, so something like that. And then, who's your family members? In Ghana, a big thing is your surname, so they can kind of trace or guess who you are by your surname. So, who's your family? And then they can see, okay, is this type of people. And yeah, you can get finessed by the police. More often than not, I've heard you get extorted by them, so
Yeah, yeah.
they'll finesse you to say, look, we'll ride with you to make sure no one else don't jack you, which is which is mad to think about it. It's like that's like their job. Do you know what I mean? Like,
No,
um
no, I hear you. I hear you.
so
So, so
yeah.
let me ask you this then, KB. Then, so because I don't know whether this is a generational thing, because a lot of people our age, they they like, I really want to go back to our homelands. I want to go there. Is
Mhm.
it a case where maybe we probably don't know enough? That's why we think that way, as opposed to like our mother's generation, our grandparents' generation. Like, no, 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 no. I'm not going back. I'm not coming back. I don't know. Is that just because of, is that naivety on our part, or do we think that the West is? I don't mean, for example, your views on the West. Is it that bad that you'd rather go to somewhere else, or you just think it's finished? If that,
Yeah, good question. I mean, we definitely, and I've seen it in the chat already, I definitely agree. We definitely at times, some of our complaints are definitely first world problems. But what I will say in defense of us, and defense of the West, is you can only appreciate or criticize where your circumstances are.
yeah,
You
true.
and I can't help, we were born in the UK. Do you know what I mean? We can't, and we can't, like, you know we can't diminish things we go through because we were born in a certain country. That's not our fault. We didn't choose that.
Yeah, facts.
And I don't think it's fair for anyone to even hold that against us as well. And this may be controversial. I don't think we should feel guilty either. And I think we have this thing of black people where, and this is sometimes, and I know some people don't like when I say this, but this is sometimes why I have issues with continental Africans rather than British Africans, just speaking on the African point of view,
Mhm, mhm.
because they almost come over here, even if they've got like, they don't have to even be fresh like that. Some of them have sort of been around Europe because Germany's got a decent Ghanaian population, especially Frankfurt and Hamburg, places like France, etc. So before they get to England, they got kind of a understanding. But when they get here, they kind of, well, I shouldn't say they, but a lot of the time they almost have this attitude of we have to help them. I get that a lot personally with other Ghanaians and West Africans, almost like I'm obliged to help them because I'm English, you know, almost in the same vein of if one of us visit back home, we're obliged to bring them back stuff. Why? Because we're Ghanaian as well. Not necessarily. Do you know what I mean? If
Mm,
to me,
mm.
I would understand that mentality more is you came from, say, a Ghana and then moved to England, America to, with the aim to quote unquote make it. Then I kind of understand. I was born here. Would they consider it lucky? Potentially because of things they go through. But at the same time, I don't think I can feel 100% guilty for um um complaining about the hardships I'm going through, particularly in this country. Because I think, especially with England, there's a big misconception, for example, by people in on the islands, people from the continent, for example, that everything is all peaches and roses and diamonds here. Like, people don't understand. Like, even when you think about a first world country like England, the fact that there's things like homelessness, there's a housing crisis, it seems, when you really think about it, when you really deep it, it seems crazy that it's a thing, but it is a thing. There
No, it's
are
true. Actually, it's true.
do you know what I mean? There are actually millions, and I don't know the statistics. I'm not going to try and put out a number out, but there are literally millions of people right now who are, you know, legally considered homeless, whether
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
in.
Within the
So,
system, or yeah, this is something I was kind of I go to back and forth with this, where
mm,
because we see people who are in worse position that we're in, sometimes. And a lot of people will say, "Oh, you don't know how lucky you are to be born," but you're right, though, isn't it? There are still problems here. We don't get it confused. Not everyone here is a millionaire. Far from it. I mean,
mhm,
there used to be a classic age of the streets of England are paved with gold.
yeah,
Show me where that is. Show me where that is, please, because I'd love to live it. I'd love to know where that is.
I'd love to go there,
I'll
bro.
dig up that road like crazy, bro. I'm digging up that road. Um, so yeah, you are right actually, and it is true. There's always, and this is a part of, I think, with the culture of people. The fact that we've complained is the reason why you could argue this is where people want to come to. Does that make
Mm,
sense? It's like,
yeah.
if we haven't complained, if we didn't say that this is not right, if we didn't say, hold on, we don't like how we've been treated, would
Mm.
anything have changed?
Exactly, exactly. And do you know what? When I look at the state of some of our countries, right? And I know there's historical things to go with this, but you know, there's almost like, and again, I don't want to speak for people, but I almost feel like there's a sense of, we're in a situation, we're kind of just stuck here, help us. But looking from the outside in, and again, I'm not on the ground, I don't know, I'm not sure of the ins and outs, and obviously we only get fed certain media, there's always a certain narrative, so who knows the actual truth. There's been enough, let's say, on least like riches, that have passed through the hands, passed through the roads of those certain countries, or at least the main ones. For example, like a Ghana, a Jamaica, a Nigeria. Got like somewhere like a Jamaica, right? With its tourism, with its, if I'm going to be honest, if I was going to say there was one, if there had to be one country in the whole world, a black country, black populated country where people's like, I want to get my food from here, it's probably going to be Jamaica. And I'm disqualifying the other islands too.
Mm.
It's influence with entertainment, food, sorry, music, even the tourism there. Even when people think paradise, most people's first place sort of resemblizes or they think of is Jamaica, even if they mean Dominican Republic, for example.
No,
Do you
you're
know?
right. It's like the top three in terms of tourism in the whole world is like that Paris and somewhere else. But yeah, Jamaica is right up there. It's like, no, it's normally vying for the top spot. So you're right. When people think of paradise, they there. Yeah, you ain't lying.
They're there. But why is there still shanty towns? Why is there still this ongoing back and forth with the police and the government, and certain cities are always still run down, and this is going on? And you know, and I've joked about this with Caribbean and African people, to be honest, and things like, you know even in the cities where there's a generator, it might be on for like 8 hours, and you don't know which 8 hours of the day it's going to be. Like, you know,
Yeah. No,
bro, man,
there
it's
was something. There was a question I wanted to pose, and it was gonna be one of these where you're right. There's so much resources that's gone through the hands, where a lot of nations should be mini paradises. It should be like places where people go to live because it's that rich. And I want to say this:
mm,
do certain people or cultures, are they can they not handle autonomy by themselves? Are certain people just they're better off being colonized? Sometimes we don't even deserve the freedoms that we have. Now that's a very controversial statement.
Damn. Do you know what though? I think
Because
there's
certain
some
cultures
truth in
don't
it.
seem to be able to handle freedom as well as other cultures.
Mm.
That's what it seems like. This is a question, open question. I'm just saying. Could that be a fact?
Do you know what? I think there's some. I think there's potentially some truth in that. As you said, controversial as that might be. And it's also starting to make me feel like there's certain nations that can't seem to handle having a large amount of wealth and what comes with wealth, if that makes sense.
Responsibility, yeah,
Yeah,
management, leadership, accountability, yeah.
yeah. And I really don't want to think or say that, especially that some people in the world kind of try to argue, especially towards us, that we're of a lesser IQ.
Agreed. Yep.
But sometimes you got to wonder, bro. So I think there's some potential truth in that. It's something to think about. But
I've
yeah,
always
it's a
said
good question.
this, that we're blessed with so much natural talent, but we're just cursed with like mismanagement. It's just one of those things where we seem to be cursed with mismanagement.
Yeah,
On a lot of things, which is why it doesn't, or even disunity. We don't quite hook it up. So yeah,
bro. I'll mute for a bit, but I'm still here, bro. Yeah, look, someone else on.
awesome. Masanda, you seem to change your name whenever you come on here every so often. How you doing?
Yeah, this is the last one. This is the last one. People get angry over the
Until the
red
next one.
pill. No, no, people get angry whenever I change or the red pill part for some reason. So I was like, let me just take it to this. Plus, this is my home language name, means king.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Big up.
yeah. So
I don't know
yeah,
how much you caught. I don't know how much you caught of the stream at all, but because obviously you're someone who lives in South Africa, so I don't know if you've lived in the West or like the UK, for example. So I don't know whether you've had a comparison between the two, but
I did visit, but I was in grade one, so I don't remember a lot. I just remember some racist white kid throwing me with snow. That's all I remember.
oh no,
Like my dad used to work in England. Yeah, I think one day during Christmas because it was snowing, right? It's Christmas when it snows, right? So yeah, I
sometimes it's
think
not been snowing for a while, but yeah, sometimes. So let me ask this then: Would you leave your home nation? I mean, are you happy at your home nation that you can your healthcare, security, safety? I'm assuming weather's not a
for
problem.
me, you're asking me,
Correct for you.
right? Personally, not
Are you looking to
yeah,
leave in the future?
yeah. I would stay in SA. Well, personally, I've always, if anything does happen, or let's say I'm still alive for the next 20 years, I would probably be in SA, probably diversify my businesses. Hopefully, I'll have one. Yeah, that's what I've always thought. I've never really thought about leaving South Africa per se, but mostly on a business front or something.
No, that's good. Because I know again a lot of continent Africans, obviously over here, particularly Nigerians, Ghanaians. A lot of them come over here. South Africans, not actually that big of a South African population over here, is there really? From what I've experienced, but yeah, in regards
Yeah, they
to
usually have dual citizenship. If you notice, South Africans, most South Africans that are in England, I guarantee you, it's not like they're not going back. Most of them will probably have some connection back home or probably come there for jobs like my dad did. Plus, because UK tends to what's the right word? Respect, I guess, certain qualifications from SA because most of the engineering and stuff we do get it from like US. I think UK, Australia, and SA, and other, I guess, other some parts of region and whatnot
right,
have some kind of like similar education that they do. So what I'm saying is obviously credited. Sorry, that was what I was looking for. Credited. Yeah. So
mhm.
qualifications are accredited in the UK. So I'm sure there's like some people that come in and out most of the time. I mean, that's how we got Corona in SA. It was through white South Africans. They brought
Right,
from to us.
right.
Yeah.
Now, given the
And
situation, like given the circumstance that I'm here in South Africa now, you're on the ground, so you have a better idea than I would. But given the fact of the ANC always gets criticized because of their mismanagement of the nation, I even saw this article where this city is meant to be a white only city or white only town. I forgot the name of the town, but it's in South Africa. So
Orania. You put a thing about Orania.
I think
It's
that's it. Yeah,
Orania.
that's the one. That's the one. So, given all that circumstances, are you optimistic about you staying there? I mean, again, a lot of people would be probably like, because you seem to be quite qualified. I
I
think
mean,
you're a
Orania, bro. Let me tell you something about Orania, and this is the part you probably hear from even the comments when you look at it. Most black people have never seen Orania in their entire life. I mean, I'm not saying that it's okay that it exists. Like, secondly, I don't even think if black people try to move in, there's anything they can do because obviously, a majority. The reality is, most people probably had to look for that city. I eat in Pretoria. I live in Pretoria, but I've never seen this town.
I suppose what
My
I'm trying to
entire
say
life.
is, do you not see there may be a pattern emerging? That's what I'm trying to say. That if that happens there, and you're right, you're not seeing it, but you see what I mean when I say patterns emerge, and you could argue it's going back to apartheid. What do you? That's what I'm thinking. Do you not have any sort of fears, or like, forget it?
Not really. I mean, if you look at what Orania is, right? Orania, for most times, I think it's still a shithole because most Afrikaners don't even live there. They don't want to live there. They still want to be in the real world, in the real SA, because nothing that schooling system is not credited all over the world. The education system is not credited. You know what I mean? Most of the things they won't get in Orania, number.
You've cut out unless it's just me. Hello.
No, it's not just you, bro. He has cut out.
All right,
Masani,
you've cut out. You're cutting in and out.
It's not a white, and I don't think it's actually white. It's just a pro-Afrikaner. There are some black people that have went there. I know some. I mean, I've seen some, so not know some. So, yeah. Do you hear me? Do you have a problem with, can you not hear me?
You cut out for like 2 minutes, so I didn't catch.
For 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, so no. I was saying that Orania, for most part, does not get any state funding. Orania does not get any involvement from government whatsoever. Orania is actually at a place where you have to drive through, like nowhere near the city, nowhere near villages, nowhere near. Like most people have to go look for Orania. So the question is, I get the whole it's a quote unquote white. Well, it's not really. It's like pro-Afrikaner because there are some black people that went there. But the thing about Orania is that you have to go there. You have to look for it on a GPS. This is why most black people won't be as offended as if it's their next door neighbor or something. This is someone I have to go look for. And most their schools are not accredited. Most Afrikaners, why don't the hobos that you see? I'm sure you've seen those white hobos on Instagram from Piper Cutty and whoever. Why did they move there? The question I want to ask is why don't poor white people move to Orania? Nobody wants to ask that question, right? Yeah.
No, fair point. Well, because I think from my point of view, and this is again from where I'm at, is just a lot of us over here where we do have our complaints about the westernized culture. Feminism is a classic example. Obviously, your name was S.A. Red Pill, and while I agree with a lot of the complaints, a lot of things I don't like, but also I'm thinking, I mean, the poverty, extreme poverty of in certain places, access to healthcare, access to education, it's just right now it's still at a level where if I was to raise my kids, the places I would leave, I'll still likely go to another Western nation as opposed to a non-Western nation. Again, weather-wise, okay, fine. I agree. Weather-wise, is terrible here. It's not the greatest. It's been nice last couple of weeks. I'm not gonna lie to you, but overall, it's not the best. But that's just a trade-off I'm willing to have. I mean, that's kind of some of the things where I'm at the moment. I mean, over there in terms of the culture, because a lot of the things that happen over there, which for me just seems like a big no-no zone. But you tell me this in terms of like healthcare and safety, how is it in your perspective where you are at in terms of healthcare, access to education, and then the overall safety, crime, and all that kind of other stuff for raising a family, for example? What would you tell people if they wanted to move to where you're at in South Africa?
They have money. I think South Africa is a great place if you have money for most part. It's because a lot of people that do have money stay in like estates. Funny enough, people in villages don't experience crime because there's a lot of mob justice there. Only in cities or townships or castles, which is something a lot different. Townships, that's where a lot of crime will be. Cities, that's where a lot of crime will be, because and it's something that's funny because I was watching a video about this. Like a lot of these NGOs, you're getting feedback.
Yeah, I can hear some feedback. I don't know if it's just me, but
Maybe try muting because you didn't mute. Let's check if that helps. Are you getting feedback now?
yeah, I'm still getting it. KB, I don't know about you if you're hearing that at all.
What about
Yeah,
now?
it's hearing it a little bit, but yeah,
what about now? Now, do you hear anything wrong?
Yeah, it's like a little high pitched noise, but it's what we can
we can hear
roll
you
with it.
though. We can hear you.
We can yeah. But let's rock with it. Continue.
Okay, so sorry, a little bit. What was the question again? Oh, you're asking about living in SA. I would say yeah, I have money, have some level of just have money. To be honest, I don't know why. Because the thing is, a lot of what happens with a lot of African refugees that obviously they'll be pushed into a black neighborhood where there was already crime, right? So the truth is, I would say have a lot of money, and when I say a lot, I mean like probably over 100K USD. Like that's a lot in SA almost because you could buy a good house at least outside of at good areas, right?
And let me ask
Or
you
even
this:
a village.
is that 100K? That's all
USD
you need forever, or do you need to have 100K? Then
for
you
the
need to
house,
have.
for the house, for just the
All
house.
right. So how much we need to live then? Is it 100K per year? Is that what we're saying? You need to have 50K per year
I'll say
USD.
to have a proper have like 500 USD to have like a proper living. Because Aslam is very cheap, I would say. Like it's not as expensive. The more I think about it, especially if I'm basing it on USD, it's not that expensive. Like there's a reason why a lot of English would also try to move back to South Africa, maybe in Cape Town or whatever, because it's not that expensive like Europe and stuff. I guess the only problem is that the crime part, but also that's regional. It's based on where you live. Crime in SA, my personal thought is that it's because obviously you say government, but also leniency. There are a lot of these NGOs that keep protecting rapists and murderers, and the fact that they removed death penalty, I feel like that's really what made SA become what it is today. I don't think it's just a black government. People are just looking at it from a far view. The reality is there's no strict government at all. I do think that death penalty should come back. I can actually show a video from an ANC member who's actually pushing for this. That a lot of the Johannesburg, let's just say it's a foreigner too. Like I just because I'll just to entertain the argument. If you're in Johannesburg, Hillbrow right now, you can't be a woman just walking there. You get snatched up and whatever in a place where we have the most powerful military in Africa, right? Why is that happening? And he was asking this question. The reality is, one, I think there's a sympathy that I think also black people feel with criminals. I don't know. I think it's maybe that's more genetic too. I don't think majority of black people are just poor at all. I just criminals at all. I think majority of black people just sympathize more with crime or people that do crime over realizing an actual future and realize that that guy could kill your future. You don't have a future with more of him. If you eliminate him, you don't have to worry about crime at all. But I don't know. I think it's how people think, man. I think that's one that maybe that's crime a lot in this.
Well, that's a scary thing, That's a very scary thing because again, I mentioned obviously KB was saying the same thing. Is that if I'm looking to move and you have a family, you have a wife, you have kids, and your kids they could be all girls, so you could have a family all full of women, and you're the sole guy there. And one of the things, especially if the young kids that you're worried about, is they're going to school or they're going out, and are they going to be safe? Something that again, it's not like it's perfect over here. Do not get me wrong. There's crime everywhere. There's crime here. You can get touched up regardless over here. But it's just the rates and the frequency of it, and just if you are even struggling to walk down the street in certain parts of SA, which I've heard a lot of. If you're a woman, I've heard a lot of rapes. I've heard a lot of things like that where it's just crazy. And obviously you're a man, so you're not going to see the same sort of. You're not going to have the same viewpoints as a woman, or you're not going to have the same sort of steps that you have to take.
I mean, I get the point. The reality is this, man. Because at this point, you'll be like, why are you doing in that area? Like, there are areas that women, if I would myself would not go.
Right.
Modern day time, I've yet to see a woman walk out at night alone. I've never seen. Most of the time, if a woman's walking at night, she's with a guy. On modern day, I've never seen that happen. Yeah. So most guys.
Oh, right. Okay. So women
guys get skeptical.
So
I get skeptical with women just getting attacked. Most women walk on talking about on nighttime. They'll be working with a guy or not work at all.
Fair enough.
Even on Uber, they'll make one of those preferable only women, and which I understand.
Yeah.
But like I said, black communities all over the world are on autopilot, man. I think most of us have normalized living hoods and going. I don't know. I think we've normalized that dysfunction to a point that it's like a motto to get rich and move into a white neighborhood. That's
So
really what black people kind of promote, like getting out of their own hood. All the pro-blacks, all the Dr. Umars, all these guys. Julius Malema lives in Sandton. His kids go to St. John's, which is a private-owned, white-owned institute. Guy wears Gucci, you know what I mean? Lives in a white neighborhood next to other whites. You know, all this. And it's weird, right? Like they live in governments that are not even run by the EFF, they're run by other parties. And for those who are wondering. So, and I think that says a lot more. I think there's a deeper question black people are not asking. Like, why are we sympathizing so much with crime? I think that's where people have to understand. Like, is it because you don't care about your future? Like, what is it? To a point that is it? I think also because I think a lot of the things black people do or people do in general are multiplicated. Like one thing will result in another thing and another thing. I think they call that slippery slope or something like that. Like it results in another thing to another thing to another thing. So you have once you sympathize, you now create a community where people are getting educated so that they can move to white neighborhoods, and then other after that you create white wealth, and then with that white wealth you create this fake NGO of saying, yo, invest in me so that we can help the black neighborhoods while you don't even live in a black neighborhood, right? Like it's like a fucked up cycle when you look at it, right? Like I can't even blame BLM at this moment, you know. They just follow.
you raise some good points, and again, this is so fascinating because over here, a lot of people, when they live in an area which a lot of us predominate, you're going to have these issues where, unfortunately, whether it be just crime or whether it be other issues that we just poverty that we're not happy with, and then we end up moving when we get on and we move to an area which doesn't have people who look like us, and we give them the wealth, we give other people their we patronize them in their businesses, and then we wonder why our wealth in our community is lower and lower and lower, while their wealth increases. There's a stat that says that for us over here, our money goes for our community so quicker than anyone.
You know,
stay.
here's the funny thing about that, right? Because I think sometimes human beings have fallen into the trap of capitalism. Capitalism, even I used to defend it, but the more I think about it, I realize one, it's fake. I realize obviously I have to participate in it because of obviously other people in the trap. And so let me tell you what I mean by that. Because of human beings have been taught about money, right? We've been taught that $1 is worth $1, and obviously because we all believe in that it's $1, it can create some level a unit of trade. Like it helps at least now have a basis of trade. Like I can now trade this sweet for $1 and whatnot. But again, where does that dollar come from, right? A lot of people claim to know, but most of us, I'm just saying the people that try to look it up will hear that it's made by central banks. Central banks from somewhere create this money from nowhere and then distribute it to the real world, right? So that it can be used as a unit of trade, right? And also, behave on inflation. What especially countries like China have shown is that you don't need international participation in order for you to have a growing economy. You just need a consumer base that actually acquires the products that are made in that country. What most Africans, or at least African countries, have not realized or are not prioritizing the most, maybe because they're old, is the idea that the biggest way to actually create any wealth is to increase the domestic, what's the right word? It's the biggest way to help. The biggest way to help a country, and I want to make it the simplest way so people understand. The simplest way to actually grow an economy the most is to have products and services that your own citizens can buy with and trade with. In that way, the more you trade, the easier it is for you to print more money into the system. Right? You don't necessarily need the international world in order for you to start building. You need the international world maybe to get bigger and have a bigger market, like what China did. But the smartest thing first that any African governments, if they were smart, is to make sure that I can build and service myself without international interference. So the smartest thing for most part is to create at least an environment where you can have your fish and oil, you can have a company that makes batteries in your country. We can have multiple companies in that country that can create self-sustaining systems, right? You can create self-sustaining systems. And obviously what I'm saying here is something that even the apartheid government did and copied and accidentally built an economy for themselves, obviously not for blacks. But that's really the bookmark they took, where one thing what they did is they start with the farming because obviously you're gonna need to eat something. Then after that they get into other sectors of self dependency. ESCOM, right? The one of the guys, I forgot his name, but the guy who founded ESCOM, the power grid in SA, power grid name is called ESCOM. He went to Germany, studied whatever he needed, and when came back and used that mining money that Bruce made for mining and started the electric distribution. And then from there, they started other services like accounting, insurance, and whatnot. Like understanding that creating a system that is self sustainable instead of just having a system that is solely dependent on the international world. The idea is not that you shouldn't have other companies in your country doing business, it's that you should have competitors of them. So the question that a lot of these African governments don't come in is who's now in Nigeria who's competing with Shell, right? Instead of a Dangote, who are the multiple people who can put to compete with Shell? That way, maybe when one company fails, there's another default. For every SpaceX, there's a Blue Origin, right? That's the importance of competition, because one, you're not easily destroyable, right? And secondly, you have another alternative, and secondly you can reduce price because now you have competitors and now they have to, I'm just saying you have more influence once there's more competition
Yeah,
than if they want.
I hear you. I hear
You know
you.
what I
Sorry,
mean?
sorry to go. I just want to try and get China back on top of it. I get exactly what you're saying, and that is definitely another important stream and topic that we need to sort of get to the crux. Well, open up a crux of in regards to.
I guess, okay, let me end by saying what black people need is to have something called a trans-temporal mindset. Trans meaning transitioning, temporal meaning time, and then obviously mindset. So like a mindset of saying this is what I'm gonna get in the near future. That's really what you need, and you actually make more money by doing that. But I don't know, when you have people that want instant gratification, that's gonna be hard.
No, I hear you, bro. I hear you. I hear you. Now, one thing I want to get back to, and this is where I would agree with a lot of the centers of where we're living at right now. And KB wanted to ask you this question about the culture. Now, obviously, being the Red Bull spaces, so you know exactly what kind of typical things guys are going to say. Modern day women, modern day this. It's the culture.
Yeah.
This. It's all that kind of other stuff. So let me ask you this question now, because is that such a big of an issue as to the reason why people should flee? Because obviously there's a massive conversation going about passport and international and all this kind of other stuff. So I don't want to get into the topic so much, but is that a good enough reason in your mind? Is that a valid reason in your mind? Is the word for people to really almost want to forego everything just to some foreign punani?
Yeah, I mean, look, okay, I'll say this first. I understand where they're coming from. However, and maybe I'm saying this from a selfish situation because I'm in a relationship, but I don't think that should be the biggest of priorities, especially for us as black males. I think we've got bigger fish to fry.
For certain men, that's the biggest thing. But continue.
I know. It's part of our problem. I mean, look, if your life's that patterned and the only thing you got to worry about is getting a chick, then more power to you, my friend. But I like to think, or I like to bet that a decent amount of these guys have got everything patterned. But for it to leave, I mean, I understand the visiting, and you might have a certain country like to go, okay, consistently, etc. But the whole leaving thing, I think there's going to be people that's going to get a shell shock when they do go to certain countries, cultures, etc. Because as much as research as they may do, or they may visit a few times and they may have certain experiences with the people and the women, I don't think a lot of people realize how we are perceived all over the world, and I'm saying particularly as black males. And in a few places in the world, it's not very friendly. It can be actually quite hostile as well. On top of the things like we kind of mentioned with the comparison to places like the West, things like the healthcare, the things like, because to me as well, and again, it's not my field, so I'm not going to delve into, I don't delve into it, but to me, you better your money better be long. Your money better be long, because unless and I know the world has changed now, so there's a lot more of this. So unless you have a career, not a job, a career that is constantly remote and you can work remotely, with no problem, starting or continuing whatever career you had in the West, or starting a new one, or even finding a job may be extremely difficult. Even it's surprising me actually, because I have seen, I have watched some of those channels and they are very interesting, I do find as well. But it amazes me the percentage of people that, for example, do want to, go abroad to marry someone else, etc. As I said, I do understand in a way, but they don't even actually, for example, know a foreign or the specific language to where they're going to. It's basics like
That's
that.
huge. If you can live somewhere, huge.
Exactly. And a lot of people don't even sort of think about that, or they kind of go in it with, starting point there, and there's a lot to it. So, and there's a lot of benefits to still being here. I understand the women, I understand that bit, I get it, but to get up and fully leave, bruv, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, for some people it would work, and some people have gone over and successfully integrated to other cultures. I'm not saying I haven't seen it. I have. I've even seen people move to like the Far East and integrate, but it's not the majority. And if I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure a lot of these people that want to do this are built for living abroad. And specifically with that in mind, to go and find, either women or a woman. On top of the fact of, and again, I suppose it depends where it is and everything else. But what about the men of those countries? How do they feel about, you come
Good
in
point.
there to come and get to grab one of their women? Some may not mind, but some might. So,
and funny enough, someone said something like, I was like, I never saw it that way, but I agree. In societies that are patriarchal, one thing that men do, they like to control their women. So you really think that these men are going to allow you guys to take their women en masse and not say something about it or not do something about it?
Exactly.
Traditional patriarchal societies, one thing that they like to do is keep their women on lock. It's just true. They like to control women. And you really think that these so-called traditional women, do you think they can be good stock of women who are going to pick you up? And if there are good stock, they won't want to go with no, but I don't know. Apparently people may say differently. A black guy? I don't know.
Oh, bro, come on. They don't. Some do, but they don't want all negros. Let's be honest, man.
Negros.
Everybody wants a negro, bro.
Oh gosh. I mean, unless you like a famous football player, a famous athlete, or a famous musician, then that's something. But just you man, bro. but yeah,
I think with those type of guys, I think if the more the occasional visits and the vacations, I think that's more feasible.
Yeah.
But to get up and go, I mean, again, I don't think it's impossible, but I think it'll take a lot of planning and actually risk taking. And to be honest, it's some of those risks are necessary, considering if you live ill and or some of them in the West. So I get it, but I don't 100% co-sign it, if I'm going to be honest. If anything, I think the happy medium might be, if you're going to go and find a woman from whatever country, region, or whatever, bring her back to where you're from. That might be the happy medium. But I don't know, people might argue that Western women will influence her. So maybe not, I guess. But
no, I hear you, man. I hear you. Let me just go to Donga, because I know you were here beforehand and you did send me a link, which I've not looked at yet. But I don't know whether, Donga, are you here to contribute? I know it says it's going to be back later. You good?
Yeah. Hello, good evening, Wine Matters. How you doing?
Evening, doing well. How you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Good evening, Musanda. How you doing? Is he there? Musanda?
He's probably away, but he was here.
Never mind. Musanda, I've been here in different places and all that stuff. How is it going? Wine Matters, good conversation? Yeah.
So I don't know. I know you sent me something earlier on today. I think it was about the West have a kind of a they use their propaganda against the other things. So did you want to talk about that? Is that what you wanted to say?
It's kind of like the situation. You can look at it from a micro level and an individualistic level, and then you can look at the situation from a macro level or a
Sure.
collective level. You understand? So as an individual, you can definitely look at yourself. You know, I can't complain. Why the West? I'm doing fine, all right in the West and all that kind of stuff. I'm achieving. I'm doing that. So you can definitely give credit where credit is due. They have a very well functioning system, and in the rest of the world or other parts of the world, the system is almost non-existent. People will think it's just Africa, but it's not. You can think about Latin America as well, which completely is like they are non-functioning states at all. The Jamaica almost they can't function properly. Almost everywhere around the world, apart from states that have I don't know, India are getting there. Like if you look at China, apart from states that truly have their destiny in their own hands, they have implemented systems that function like Japan, China, and all that kind of stuff. But the rest of the other world is just not working out. But there's reasons to that, and there's macro level reasons to that, and I guess that's what the video was addressing. But as an individual, I'll definitely say what's to complain about. But it's just when you think about that and you look at, like, when you walk around why it matters, and then you say I'm doing very well in the UK and all that stuff. I've done very well. But you see all them other black kids that have not made it through the system, and all they see is just stabbing each other and all that kind of stuff. Like that's their reality. But your reality is different. How do you deal with that? How do you handle that?
That's a very good question, and you are right. Even here, people have complete different realities. I know a schoolmate of mine was in the news for something that he did, and he's now in prison for like 35 years of his life. So that's his life gone.
Yeah.
And you're right. That is his reality. That's other people's realities. And I suppose
although you were given both equal opportunities, you had equal opportunities.
Possibly. But no, you're right. Possibly. We live in the same place, but you could argue family structure might have been different. I don't know him as an individual, but yeah, I get what you're saying, and you are right, pretty much.
Yeah. So when you extend that to like instead of just individual to a swath of people, there's a group of black people that have done well in the UK, and there's another group of black people that have left behind. And sometimes some people don't even feel like they fit in a certain aspect or certain social gatherings or settings. They don't feel to be part of the nation as well. They don't feel that feeling you feel for the nation. They feel like left behind and all that kind of stuff. So I guess there is positives and then there's negatives. Sure. So it's just learning how to learning or seeing how people handle that and deal with that. So that's the way I look at it as well.
Sure. There's an expression which someone said, and I'm going to start using it by now. It's the grass is greenest where you water it. So how I'd answer your question is this: we do like to complain about a lot of things, but truth be told, we always think the grass is greener on the other side. But truth be told, if you nurture, if you water grass in the area that you're in, it's likely to it's going to grow higher, it's going to be greener, it's going to be better. So a lot of people, what they look to do is, I'm going to leave because I'm unhappy with this, and because over here looks nicer. The actual fact, it's still you may be part of the problem, but if you focus on you and you make the best out of the situation, I know I'm talking about where I'm at right now, because everywhere else is different. I get it.
From that point of view, I can see the reason why you brought the topic from that silo, that point of view alone. As in, people are leaving complaining about the West, as if they think the grass is greener on the other side as well. Like it's kind of naivety as well. It's a bit of naivety. So from that point of view, I understand your.
Don't get me wrong, Donga. I hear what you're saying. And I did say this at the start. I'm not saying that there aren't valid issues here, and do not get me wrong. Homelessness, cost of living, house prices, the fact that people are they're not moving out their homes until later in life. The people aren't getting married later in life. A lot of these things are cause of financial pressures. There's a lot of pressures that happen in the West, which people don't seem to respect as much. So a lot of pressures there. But I suppose it's trade-offs in every place that you go to, in everything in life. There's always trade-offs, and the question is, what are you willing to trade? Are you willing to forego, for example, the NHS for something else? Are you willing to forego having a potential job that's higher paying? Are you willing to trade? That's kind of where I'm at with things. What are you willing to trade? So for me, it's all about security, safety, health. That's the first three things I have to look at. In any nation I go to, do these three things stack up to equal to, or at least better than where I'm at right now?
I agree with you. That's why I like to segment it like that and say, at the end of the day, I'm an individual as well, so I have to think about, like you said, my safety, my security as well. And almost everybody will do the same as well. Everybody will do the same. Everybody will do whatever it can to advantage them in this life, even if something's cheaper elsewhere. If they can afford to have what they have over here cheaper somewhere else, they will do it. Everybody will do what they can to advantage themselves as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I agree with you to that extent. I guess what I'm trying to say is that while we're saying this, it might be good for us to also be conscious or cautious of the situation, because sometimes it makes the situation go one way as well, and people just tend to say, it's complaining about this while you're being a hypocrite. So it's just being sensitive to the other side of things, those who may be left behind,
No. I agree. And there's a conversation that I suppose we need to have at some point about, do we have a responsibility on people who are left behind? And again, are they left behind because they've been stupid? They've not made the right choice? Because this is the thing I was talking about freedoms. Freedom is a privilege which a lot of people in other parts of the world do not have. Again, freedoms to walk on the street, freedoms to be able to criticize the government, freedom to be able to protest, freedoms to be able to even go on the internet. In China, for example, you can't go on certain websites; they ban you because it's against obviously it's a communist party. So there's a lot of freedoms, and with that become privileges, and with that becomes consequences. So it's a massive question about all of that in that respects, because we all have.
So at the macro level, I'm looking at it as some of it, like when you look at, for instance, let's take Latin America, for instance, right?
Sure.
Why are they in that state of conflict constantly? Like these are supposedly ex-European nations. They should be able to function just as well as Spain as well, because they have that system, and there's a lot of Spanish people there. It's not like a situation in Africa or something where white people have been moved out or something. They've got enough Europeans who have that experience of nation building. So why is Latin American countries always in conflict and they have not recovered now? And Mexico, it's almost like something is done on purpose to make sure these nations, Brazil, doesn't function to the best it could. You know what I mean?
No, that's interesting. I mean, are you thinking more of again, this is where the West imperialism, in which they are holding back other people?
Now, when you say that, they say, the white man's holding back. But this is a geopolitical game. It's a geopolitical game, and the United States would like to have complete control over its hemisphere of the world. You understand what I mean? So a nation like Brazil and Mexico and these ones actually functioning properly will juxtaposition the situation. Like Cuba was enough of a threat. Imagine these other ones being that having that type of way, and they actually function. That could tip the economic balance or dominance the United States has over there. Brazil is big enough and resource rich enough to do that. Mexico as well is resource rich enough to do that. Argentina as well. But
I was going to use the example of Venezuela. Like, for example, Venezuela with the oil, and again, and this is the thing: if you've got a country which is unstable and then have a lot of resources, it makes it even more unstable, because you have, again, bigger forces like the US, the UK, France. They're always looking to, hold on a second, a destabilized country means that we can get our hands on these things. A stabilized nation, they can tell you hands off. So no, there's truth in that. Even like, for example, in Western nations, I give the example of Microsoft back in the day. Microsoft they monopolized the world in terms of the software and the output, and they didn't want anyone in on it. So much so that the trading standards had to say, look, Microsoft, this is pretty much illegal. What you're doing is illegal. How you're dominating the market. You're buying off all these competitors, like Facebook buying off. They bought WhatsApp. They bought Instagram. They're buying all these competitors off because they didn't want anyone to have an equal market share. So I agree with you. Powerful nations, powerful companies, the last thing they want is competition. That's the last thing they want. What they want is a complete dominance. So I don't disagree with you there.
So you see how that seeps in from the macro level to the micro level, how it affects different individuals, even back home. So you live in states, so we can sit and say, but those states are dusty. Those states are terrible. They don't function and all that stuff. But there's reasons behind it. There's reasons why they are not doing it. It's like, it's like this. It's like this. One time in the world, human beings had the same equal level or access or ability to produce and manufacture weapons, science, and everything. But now it's like certain states or certain regions of the world are the only ones that can innovate in terms of technologies and all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? There are some that are breaking the mold and done their thing, but now there's a major separation between the freedoms to produce, manufacture, science, and development. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
No, I do. And there's so many ways to tackle it. There's so many angles. I know you're talking about the macro affects the micro, the individual, and it's true. But then part of me wants to say, well, you have leaders in charge, and what leaders are going to stand up and say, no, we're doing what's right for our people, and we don't care what anyone else says because we believe in ourselves. You see what I mean? It's like there's so many things where I don't.
That is a long conversation.
Yeah, I know, and this is where when you ask me about people have been left behind here, and there's two forms of thought. What I have it's never black and white. What about that individual person's choice to say, no, I'm not going to, stab somebody? I mean, there's certain things I'm like, I can't agree that the system made you kill someone unless it's in self-defense. I can't believe that the system made you not pay attention in school when we're in the same school class. I can't believe that. You see what I mean? I can't believe somebody said you must misbehave. I'm like, who told you to misbehave? Everyone tells you stop misbehaving. It's like there's certain things I'm like, at what point do we say it's that individuals responsibility to stand up and say no, enough is enough? But then it's too late by the time these things really happen. So
that's true. You've been all given the same opportunities, and they have not made the right choices as well. And then they asked some who circumstances I wouldn't let them to have those choices. So that's my contribution to it. I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't appreciate or something or the situation that I have or something. There's a full appreciation, but we always have to also recognize reality and not because sometimes it goes veers into cognitive dissonance. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. No, I hear you. Let me ask you this question. I'm sure you've been on my panel before, but it might be under a different name. But are you living in the West? Are you living in the Western nation right now, or are you living?
Yeah, I'm in the Western nation, and we're in the same place.
Awesome. So, in comparison, then, because this is the key, where a lot of our peoples right now who've been born and bred here, a lot of them, they talk about the West, they hate the culture. A lot of it's cultural issues, feminism, the trans movement, LGBTQ movement, everything's being shoved down your face. So it's not a nice place for people to raise their kids. What would you, in comparison, how would you view it?
Well, I'm actually kind of a leftist as well, or probably center or something. So I'm quite, I don't have a problem with all these new movement, all this anti-wokeism and all that stuff that I'm hearing. I don't fall for it and all that stuff. All this freedom of speech, freedom to offend and all that kind of stuff. I don't fall for that. You know what I mean? So they say freedom of speech was given to criticize governments, not to offend people and all that kind of stuff. So anyways, that's beside the point. I am for it. I am, like, when I look at it, right, I do agree the West is far more developed, not just infrastructurally. As society, they are far more advanced. Their systems are far more advanced. Like, let's give an example of how the Arab Emirates look, or Saudi Arabia. If you look at them, or Dubai, it looks a bit more developed than the West, isn't it? It looks more nice architecturally, but in terms of societies and all that, and having systems work in place, they're a little bit behind. You know what I mean? Saudi Arabia still, I don't know if they're cutting people's heads off or something like that. So their laws are kind of behind the times as well. There's limited freedom of speech as well. Is it only recently they allow women to drive as well? And Afghanistan is going all the way backwards as well, and all that stuff. You understand? So you can't. The thing I know is development is not just about you developing an infrastructure and all that kind. There's systems in place, and your laws have to evolve with the times as well. So that's where I see the West is far more advanced in terms of that.
Yeah, I hear it's more, let's say, free thinking. It pushes the boundaries of what is actually reality. Now, some people would argue, like, for example, gender and things like that. It's like, come on, that's a bit too far. Now, I think most of us understand there are two sexes, there are two genders, but okay, here you go. But so I suppose let me just ask you this question. I'll pivot to the
Let,
rest.
let me put that in another way, or piggybacking over there. Yes, there's two genders, but in nature you do find some things that are a bit eccentric or deviant. There's always deviation of that
Yeah,
which is the natural process as well. So you will find albinos, you will find white snakes and all that kind of stuff. You'll find
sure.
black people. So you find this deviation in nature as well. It's a constant. You know, it's a constant. Without deviation, things don't even, we don't find new pathways as well. You know what I mean? So that is that's just me going another way. But that is a reality. So you have to accept, if you do have those minorities or those type of people in your society, you have to account for them. What do you wanna do? Resort to killing them and all that kind of stuff because they're minorities? You
No, no,
wanna
no,
resort to cutting heads off or something like that? So
no.
you don't want to resort to that because people will just look at that and just say, look at this person's society. He's just killing off people. Oh, albeit they gay or something like that. But it's not civilized. It doesn't look civilized if people are persecuting minorities, no matter what kind of religious minorities, sexual minorities, or racial minorities. When the minorities are starting to get killed off like that, that society doesn't look as civilized as well. I think Muhammad Gandhi said it or something cool in Gandhi. We know he's controversial. He said, how do you measure civilization? You know, how do you measure how societies are civilized? He said you measure them by watching how they treat their minorities, how they treat their poor, how they respond to them. If the poor are doing well and are represented and are being given fair treatment, that society, you can say, is quite wealthy because they can afford enough to give that kind of tolerance or accommodate them as well to a certain in the system. But when you see that societies cannot accommodate any types of minorities at all, they only care for the nationalistic side and their own people as well. Is it, why are they doing that? Is it because they hate, or is just that they have not evolved enough to even to help, you know, or they don't have the resources necessary, so they just funnel the resources only to themselves? That's well. You can't hate somebody entirely like that. You know what I mean? When you have too much, you will be able to afford to give to your lesser. Do you understand what I'm trying to say in that
No,
kind
no,
of
no.
way?
I do, and you a couple of points you touched on, which is really good, and I do agree with it. Regards to again the last point, civilization is based on how you treat the lesser, because it's easy to treat people who have a lot well because you know they have money, they have fame, they have riches, they have power, but the people who you don't seem to aren't on the same level as a whole different aspect. So no, I definitely hear you there. I think the other thing I won't say disagree with, but just I wanted to get your thoughts on, and probably the panel is just, I know you're saying we have deviations, which is why you could argue we have what we have right now, but it just seems like that deviation has become, it's surged to such heights. It doesn't become a minority. It's now becoming, I don't know, it might be just how the media are pushing it. It might be just media driven as opposed to reality. But it just seems to be at such heights that it's crazy. Whereas in other areas, it's not the same way. Because I would expect deviation, or if it's an evolution, not to only exist maybe in one part of the world. I could be wrong. It might be what we're eating or what we're drinking or what we're putting into our bodies somehow. But it's just, yeah, it's just the takeoff of a lot of these things is phenomenal. But you could argue it's because we're
I personally haven't felt that as well. I'm not worried particularly in any way. I'm not worried with this deviation as well. I think
so, sorry to cut. If you had any kids, this is the question I open to the panel. Then, if you have, do you not worry about your kids? We all have our sort of ways that we kind of grew up with, and we all have our thoughts on things, regardless of whether you're tolerant. But if you had kids, and I'm even thinking about this now, having to come across maybe you might be messing with a woman and she's a trans, and like, oh snap, she didn't tell me because she doesn't want to, you know what I mean? Or your child comes back and tell me, I don't believe I'm this, I'm that, or you know, so many things where sometimes until it happens in your family, it's like, oh, I didn't see it that way until it hits you. I don't know. It's a tricky question to answer.
I see what you mean as well, and I agree with you. I didn't complete what I was gonna say, but yeah, I do agree with you. There is too much of a push for it as well, an over-representation of it. Like it doesn't balance out with reality. You understand what I mean? There's so much of a push for it in the media as well. You know, but in reality, on the ground, that's not the case. You understand what I mean? But you do see so much representation for it, and so much. So if I had a kid that's like that, I probably will well, that's a difficult one. If my kid was naturally like that and all that stuff, I'll have to accept him. No choice. I'll have to accept him. But I wouldn't want none of this confusion about I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm all that kind of stuff. Right.
And this is why I'm thinking,
That's the bit where I become very conservative and all that stuff. So.
And this is where I'm thinking, is it because we're living in an environment that almost, what's the word, exposes that person to more things like that? So, you know what I mean? KB, KB, the rest of the panel, KB, what do you think of that? It's a tricky question to answer, but what are you worried about some of the cultural exposure that your children's going to be born up in?
Well, you know what? It's a very good question. I was thinking as you guys were talking, and you know what? I've got to be honest. If my son came to me and said, you know, his quote unquote girlfriend is revealed as a trans, or he feels like he identifies as a girl, or you know, this sort of stuff, I would be disappointed. I'm not gonna lie. Several things. Firstly, I'll feel like, okay, I went somewhere a bit wrong. And why in particular for myself, I say that, and also to tie in with the whole subject, is one thing I will say, at least for, if not an African, if not a Ghanaian, if not just personally my family, that sense, and it's definitely from the continent, or at least my, you know, immediate part of that, you know, that sort of stuff is almost, and I don't mean any offense, and I don't want to get any any madness on your channel or YouTube trying to look for you, but that sort of lifestyle, shall we say, is number one simply ridiculous, because the core blueprint of reproduction is between male and female. That, you know, just that's how it works. You know, that's how it's always worked. You can't reinvent the wheel. That's it. That's the mentality that I've grown up with. There's men, there's women. You get together, you have children. That, you know, that's it, or whatever.
You connect the question to the.
Yeah,
No, just saying. Can I ask a question? I thought you were done. I was asking. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, Donga, yeah, because I just came back now. You're that guy. I think I've seen you before. You had another name, though. I don't know if you remember me. But so now what I want to ask is that when people talk about gays, right? Because I get it, like the gays. Some American guy sent me a video of a South African guy who's a transgender in the US. So talking about how inspired he was by American media and all of that. Personally, I've never seen a transgender myself. You know, I hear they exist. I just never see them. But what always hits me about this whole conversation, right, is that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have a problem, but I just find it weird how black people can actually unite with whites, right? And I've noticed this also in my high school over homosexuality and how much they're against it. And then for some reason, that even acts like how can I say since we have this common enemy, let's forget the past and us owning everything and all your wealth and whatnot. Like, you know what I mean? And this, let me get to what I'm saying. I feel like a lot of this idea that homosexuality being extreme and is gonna hurt Africa is obvious. I think most of Africans, most of the human race, for most times, is always gonna be sexual, right? Because of hormonal, right? Most of us are not attracted to women because we thought women are attractive. We just are. It's like there, you know what I mean? But there's this media push on making it sound like we have to, like, for some reason, gays are actually gonna be the majority in the planet, and now some reason we're not gonna always breed and have more kids. And the truth of the matter, I feel like for most African countries, the problem is not birth. For most time that we're not having enough Africans, the problem is, are those Africans born in good households? Are they born from parents that can actually take care of those kids? Right? And those are parts that nobody's talking about. People are so worried about the fact that they won't exist anymore. When they're like every day right now, I'm sure there's thousands of kids that are just brought into poverty, not because they're born black, but because they're born from a poor black family in general, right? But so now reason we're gonna make this a big topic on the fact that it's a scary thing. All I'm saying is, I don't know if you guys are getting well, because I know I'm just rambling right now. I feel like gay and homosexuality is not an African issue, not
Yeah,
even close.
I agree
Black
with.
people have I've got to finish, sorry, but to finish. And most black people have to understand that whites are gonna use this as a unifier to make you actually forget about your gruesome past. Because if I can get you to have more emotions on that than me owning your land, your resources, and everything, then I've won. And this has happened before. It's not like something I'm making up. Look at World War, especially in places like America and South Africa. All those white people were all kumbaya, let's say unite against the Nazis. When it's all over, you go your side, I go mine, and then I take the wealth. I'm just saying, like, don't focus,
Musanda,
don't
Musanda,
unite over. Yeah.
let me respond to that. I agree with you because a couple of points. I agree with you in the sense that yes, I also don't see it as a huge reality in Africa. I don't see it as a huge reality in real life, like as if gay people will take over and all that kind of stuff. That's not going to happen as well. But what was I going to say again? Why it matters. Sometimes in corporations when you see they have like black people come around, so they have black people. They take pictures for black people to represent diversity or something like that, to look diverse and all that stuff. But in
Right.
reality, the company doesn't have almost no black people in that company. But as soon as they have a black person, they just love to have that feeling, that quota as well. So maybe for I don't know, for some nation states like that, it's like that to have that kind of to look progressive at least. You know what I mean? You need to look progressive in comparison to other European countries. And Musanda, I don't think all black people necessarily unite with white people. As you can see, in the West, there's different black people with different opinions on it. Some people are more conservative about it. Some people are more liberal about it as well. It doesn't mean they unite. So there's different black people like that. And then in Africa, we know almost the majority stance that Africans have towards this. So there's no union going here. I think it's depending on the society you live, you will have your opinion on it as well. But yeah, I don't think it's the reality on the ground that homosexual, like
Okay.
Musanda said, human beings will be very sexual and all that stuff, hormonal and all.
By default, yeah. And look at that priest that went to Uganda and literally got all those people held up over gayness. Like, it's a priest who's made all this wealth from your country, taking all your gold and whatnot, and now he's here to say to help you take down the gays. But he'll never go back to Africa to give you reparations for the things they done. And I just see all these Africans so happy, like, yeah, it's against God, it's against this and this and this. I'm like, you have this much energy over, I don't know, like, this is where I feel like the Bible is very powerful, guys. You have this much energy over a hypothetical issue than from somebody who actually fucked your entire economy over. That shit boggles me from Bantus. Like, black people make me wonder sometimes. Like, how do you actually listen to a guy who put you in this fucked up position talking about, I'm here to help you take down the gates? He's not saying I'm here to help you, give you back all the shit I stole and fix all the damages I've done to Africa. No, he's going there to help you take down the gays and be the white hero. And black people accept that.
Do you
It's
know what?
sad. It's sad.
Your viewpoints are the exact same viewpoints I have when black men talk about feminism, black women, the community, and the red pill. That's my exact thoughts. There are so many things out here which I'm like, you can't be blaming black women for all these issues where, like you said, other groups have had a far, far, far better hand at making us weird the position that we're in, if we want to go there. But yeah, I'll say this in regards to that. I think there's certain things that we just feel is so against nature that regardless of how other people have treated us, it's like, yes, we agree on this. Yes, it's like I think for us it just feels such a, I don't want to use this word because it's not necessarily the right word to use, but it feels like an abomination that it's just like, even just a small minority is like, oh, it's like a bad smell where you can't get rid of, and it's like, so I think that's the reason why it gets so much conversation, and if we feel it that way, because I don't know why. I think that's the case when it comes to us.
Is it somewhat is it a lack of progress on that end as well? Because then, if let's say, let's take an example as well, right? You'll find this similar situation in a metropolitan or cosmopolitan area. You find a lot of human dynamics, or how human beings interact will be very dynamic and almost high level. Or if you go to the village, people live very rurally. They live very rural. They live, they go up and go to the farm, get their food and all that kind of stuff. That's the natural reality, so they don't deal with relations at such a complex level as the cities will do as
Sure.
well. So when you go to these people who are a little bit behind, because cities are more advanced than villages are most of the time, except somehow, I don't know, maybe in wealthier countries as well. So you will find this dynamic as well. So I need to say that the city folk have become so socialized that they've got to such an extent, like it's producing some kind of weird deviant behaviors are coming apart, or and the villages are a bit behind as well. They just have a simple way of living, so it's going to seem like an abomination for them, these deviations. Do you understand? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely, and this is where I say this. A lot of people, I think, want in life, especially me. Well, I say me, and a lot of men. When people say we want tradition and we want this, I think we want simple. A lot of us, funny enough, especially when you get a bit older, you just want the simple life. That's why, for example, a lot of dream for a lot of people is you get money and you go to somewhere hot, somewhere nice where you can live a nice simple life by the beach, drinks, food, fresh food, all that kind of other stuff. A lot of people just want the simple life. We don't have to worry about all these complications about having to worry about pronouns. We don't have to deal about these complications about gender. We don't have to deal with complications about this and that. We like the simple life, especially when we get older, because I think a lot of poor nations, because like you said, they have to worry about other things. It creates more simplicities. It's simple when it comes to gender roles. It's easy. Men do this, women do that. It's simple that way. It's simple understanding that you need to do this to get water, to get food. It's simple. I think simple creates it's just a simple life. Whereas when we have
it's a thing that Dr. What's his name? Dr. Dusty as well said. I can't remember as well. It's he may be a dusty guy, but he makes some good points sometimes as well. You know what I mean? So he made a point as in exploring certain deviances or ideas in your head, that how it can be that he kind of referred to it as low IQ or something, because you're not allowing your brain to just think about it as well or process it and go past it. You understand what I mean? So to someone like I saw a white guy who went to an African village somewhere in Kenya as well and started questioning people about the role of man and woman, gender pronouns, and all that. Can a man be? You know how the villagers are gonna respond typically as well. I've seen that documented. They were completely vehemently like, "What? What are you talking about? How can a man be a woman?" And that, so the people were quite surprised like that. So is it? I think it's just this. It's just how when people are interacting to such a complex level, it produces these deviations. I think, I don't know if I articulated that well. You get what I'm trying to say as well. So it's a case of a simplified form of living. Yes, people prefer it as well. People prefer it, but sometimes people in the villages are simpletons. Come on.
come on. Sometimes
that's fucked up way of saying it, but
sometimes I think we got the game backwards. Sometimes I look at things and think, like I'm a pretty much urban city boy, and I think, these people here in the bush, they're too simple. But truth be told, they may be on something a lot more than we.
They may be. What do you say? Maybe they are more in common sense. I don't know, or something.
Probably, because again, like you said, you go into villages, talk about gender pronouns. You're like, who's the dumb one, me or you?
yeah.
But
Musanda, what do you got to say to that or something?
That village people don't care. I feel like that was the way concluding, but it's as simple. Like they're not. Is that way you're concluding, right?
Yeah. I'm saying village people in general, they don't process these things because that's not their reality as well. That's not their reality. Their reality is everyday living the village life as well. While people in more urban areas and cities will more likely be able to see this often and deal with it often as well. You understand? So in a way, we can see how the reacts. Because why matters was trying to say was saying, I don't know, like how we react to these situations as well. Like Arabs people, black people, or other people, instead of Western nations, are more progressive with this kind of homosexual and gender pronouns, they're more tolerant of it, while we are not tolerant of it as well. So I'm kind of like giving an example between a village and a very metropolitan kind of city. So it's kind of like the West. It's like the city, the metropolitan city, while we are kind of like the villages. Do you get what I'm trying to say right now? Now, why it matters? We are like the villagers reacting to these new gender pronouns and all this stuff, while the West are a bit more progressive towards it. I use the word progressively cautiously as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear what you're saying. And this is the thing about, again, when you talk about civilization, and part of that is not just about bricks and mortar technology. Part of that is about people and how their minds develop and how they push forward the culture. Again, these conversations here in certain places, is a no-go. You can't have conversations about a lot of things in certain places about, say, religion. You can't have conversation about certain things, technology, even not to be disrespectful, but just to have an open conversation. You can't have that. So part of civilization is not just it's about the people more than anything, than the bricks and mortar. So
so let's give another example. Let's say like traditions, like certain traditions. Older folk or people, older folk, let's say like we have a country like Ethiopia, they have certain traditions as well. People in the cities in Ethiopia will probably not start, their traditions will start to they'll start to not be that traditional as well. So they will either, but the older people in the villages will still want to keep the traditions alive. Sometimes the traditions can be good, sometimes they can be bad. You know, if you don't want to progress or evolve your tradition, you want to remain in that way, eventually the reality start to show which is a progressive society and which is one that's stagnant. Do you know what I mean? So
I do. But the thing is, though, is there a point of, I won't say no return, but where it's like, okay, we've gone too far, and this is where people think now, and this is where people use this traditional to beat people down over the head with. Now, I know you lie more left center. I'm more of a center left myself. So, do you still? Where are you at this stage? Do you see it? I know you said that on the ground it's not too much of an issue, but do you see a point of no return where it's like, hold on, yeah, I need to leave, or I need to reevaluate how progressive we really are?
It's like I said, I agree with Musanda's point, and like I said, with the company illustration, right? They want to fill in that quota of diversity as well, so they just blackberate too much in our faces and all that kind of stuff. So, but in reality, that's not what it's showing. So we get a lot of these push on television everywhere. It's being gone home, but in reality, human beings are still human beings, and man will still sleep with a woman. That's just a natural process. That's going to remain as well. These are just deviations that emerge. But when have we gone too far? When can we check the media and tell them it's just it's going to be? I don't know if we. I don't know.
I suppose the reason why I asked that question is because I listen to some YouTube channels and they act as if the house is falling down, when in actual fact, to your point, it's not really the reality on the ground. But do you know what that makes me think? That they can spot patterns and trends early, and they don't want their country to go into a state that they've seen other nations go to. And this is where sometimes I think us as people get a bit too lax. I think sometimes we don't seem to sound the horn early enough until it's too late. And then by the time it happens, our countries are stolen from us, our land is stolen from us, our wealth is stolen from us. And when you sound the horn, it's too late. We've already. So sometimes I think we can be a little bit too. Oh, it's fine. It's nothing. Oh, it's fine. It's nothing. Other groups are like, no. Let 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, it's World War II. It's everything has to be talked about. So sometimes I do think we can be a little bit too. It's fine. You see what I mean?
It's a fine balance to maintain between being traditional and also allowing for progressivism to happen as well within societies as well. You want to find that right balance as well. One tips over the other, it will produce certain results that we may not like. You're not going to like it. If it's too progressive, then something completely queer and weird is going to emerge. If it's too traditional, it's just going to remain stagnant and draconian, and just, you know what I mean? The people they will be low IQs and all that kind of stuff.
I hear you. So right now, then, are you staying here I know in the UK? So are you thinking about staying here, or are you in the mindset of here for a little while, but I'm still going to go elsewhere outside of the West.
I'll still pay my British taxes. I'll still pay the British taxes. I'll be working as I'll pay the British taxes because I'm paying back to the system. You know what I mean?
So are you good to set up here then? That's it for the rest of your life. You're like, I'm going to be here, live here, die here, that kind of stuff.
I'm going to travel the world and see the rest of the world and all that kind of stuff. Who knows?
You can still travel.
I might end up in Japan.
All right.
I might end up in the moon. I might end up in space.
Have you guys seen a castle before? Have you seen those mythical castles they show on as Africans here? Those castles. Do they still exist? Someone there in Europe. Have you guys ever seen an old castle? That's what I'm asking.
Oh, old castles. They're not an ending, isn't it? They're all over the place as well. So yeah.
No, not near. I'm talking about like no technology. Like one of those that are really next to like a river or something. Like if you look the other side, it's like an ocean or something. Not one next to the sea.
Musanda, what about you, Aibatas? Have you gone on one of those trips to look at old
I
castles?
asked you, how would I see these things, Marine Zanzibar?
No, I'm referring to why it matters. Have you gone around to see these castles and that?
Well, we have castles in the UK. But I suppose in terms of what Musanda's saying, a castle near like a lake and all that kind of other stuff, is that what you're saying? Those kind of castles?
Yeah. The ones they are next to a lake or something. Like those are you can tell like there'll be kings are like, yeah, we're gonna avenge my father. Like one of those will show you like on the Game of Thrones type of castle. You know? Yeah, like winter's coming, lad.
Musanda, you really need to visit the UK and spend a couple of years and all that stuff, and you will be done with it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw there's a podcast that was like talking about how you're in the UK when you see girls walking at night alone. That's how you know you're in the UK. I think it was in London or something. They was taking videos like, look at those girls just walking by themselves. There were 3 alone at night. Like, so yeah. Is it safe in London though at night?
Well, I don't live in London, so I can't comment.
I don't live in London neither, but is it safe in London at night? Well, nothing ever happens to me when I go there. I suppose it depends on which areas you're working in. Like if you're working in some murky areas, then definitely.
It looked like it was in a city. Like, isn't London a city? Like,
London,
like
but there's different parts of London, and they produce different results as well. So if you end up in the wrong area, and you could get attacked or robbed.
What does it take to have gun ownership in the UK? What does it take to have a gun, like to hold a gun, to have the rights to hold a gun?
You can't get a gun over here.
You can get a gun, but it's different. You have to have like a case, and it's a special permit for a gun license. It's not like a pistols or handguns that you just carry around like that. You don't have a license to carry in that sense over here. I'm not saying people don't have guns, but there's no license.
So you have to. So they're making it hard, man. When you have an op, and now you have to you have to use a knife, and it takes time.
My man, is that my man?
I feel bad with big members.
What I'm saying is, if British people had access to guns, it will be worse than America. Why matters? Am I wrong in that? 1 in 4 people in the UK are not all day in the brain. They all suffer it. 1 in 4 people. Is
it the black? Is it the blacks? Will be more blacks killing other blacks?
It's white, black, everything. Like these people.
Wait, there's white on white crime.
These people. Anyway, never mind.
I'm not I'm not disagreeing. I'm asking, bro. I'm shocked because I know it as you guys always make the topic about
these people. Some people find thrills from just killing people. They just wonder what it's like to kill somebody. They wonder what it's like to torture somebody and all that stuff. There are some people that have that kind of wave in the brain. So they have this curiosity, and in the UK, if it's not sadness or psychological issues, it's also a curiosity. So if the UK had weapons, man, it will be worse than America. People are more repressed over here than the United States. That when they're more repressed, so they are taught to bottle their anger, to stiff up a lip whenever something happens. So there is a lot of cases where people will kind of like blow up and all that stuff, like blow a gasket and all that stuff. So there's a lot of cases like that. While in America, people are very expressive. They're very expressive. Everything is overt as well, and they're quick to die. You understand what I mean? Like it's just so expressive. But in the UK, a lot more of those school shooting shit it will likely happen. I mean, look, we have the knife crime and it's already happening like that. Imagine if we had guns and all that stuff. It would be completely terrible.
So you're telling me that in the UK, so I'm asking this, chances are I could get robbed by a white guy, but like, hey, give me your money if you know what I mean, mate. You know that.
Well, I'll say this.
It'll be funny, man. I'll be funny. I'm like, why are you robbing, bro? You're white. I'm sorry, I would ask him that question. Like, why? How do you end up here, bro? You own your people have created a structure for you to thrive for just having your skin, and you still choose crime, bro. I don't feel bad for white criminals. I'm sorry, bro. Like, if you're white, there are two unique things you're not allowed to have: an excuse and a point. Like, you're not allowed to say, hey, this community should do this, and you're not even not given a chance to have an excuse. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, white criminal in the UK. Why?
This guy, what's wrong with this guy? Come on, Butsanda. What's wrong? There's criminals of all kinds of shapes over here, bro.
In the UK.
Bro, I'm confused by that. I think you think the UK is playing with gold.
I'm just saying, like, look at SA, bro. White people would rather be hobos in this country than do crime. So that's what I wonder. Like, so why in the UK are they? Because I thought, especially media, they try to promote the crime is like a black thing. Obviously, it's bullshit. But in a way, you can understand it too. Not to say that there are no criminals in the US that are white, but majority of people are gonna be like, yo, give me your money and whatnot, are gonna be black. So when you guys say this, are you guys saying this? Because I feel like you're capping, to be honest.
Here's what I say. Certain crimes have a tendency for certain groups to be more represented. For example, if you talk about burglary, if you talk about house robbery, white people commit more burglaries. Now, if it's knife crime, if it's like robbing someone, then yeah, I agree. It's where black people there are more represented. Don't mean that white people won't still stab you, won't rob you. That I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but yeah, there's more of, you're gonna have more fear of black people doing that than white people. It depends on the crime.
And white people are 95% of the population.
85%.
85. Where were they? 85. So 15% is non-white, meaning Arab, also including Arab and Hispanic, right?
Yeah, non-white British. Yeah, that's what they say. So
Asians and all that.
Asians, blacks, even like Polish, they count as non-white British, but 85% is like white British, and then the rest is other.
I'm just saying, like, I don't know. I feel bad for investors a little bit. Like, I feel like disappointed them the most. Like,
sometimes you will find in gangs, it's always the white guy or the lighter skinned guy that's the most dangerous one out of the whole gang. He's the one that's willing to do the most as well. You know that.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's always the white guy that wants to. I don't know. Maybe it's because the need to prove that he's hard or something like that. But he's willing to do the most, and he'd probably be the one to initiate the stabbing and all that stuff. At the end of the day, some black guys get arrested.
Are there any gangs that are multiracial in the UK?
Yeah. I think in London they will be and all that stuff. But why it matters? I think you'll know more about this kind of. Even Nottingham and all that stuff. They used to call it Shottingham. Something like that.
Yeah, they did. And keep in mind again, because a lot of us can be raised around each other, then for definite you can have multiracial gangs. Now, you do have gangs that aren't as multiracial, but yeah, 100%.
I lived in Nottingham for a bit and all that kind of stuff. I lived in Nottingham.
So kids, boys raised in the UK end up like the ones in America where they just want to join gangs. Is what happens in the UK, the US.
Don't always fall for propaganda and everything. It depends on a few factors when it comes to that kind of stuff. But again, a lot of times it's home upbringing. It's about that individual. It's about environment. It's all these kind of things that take place, which does affect that.
And it's culture. Because look at Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is such a poor country, yet you won't find no gang, no crime. People don't even lock their doors in both Botswana and Zimbabwe.
But if everyone's, here's my question to that though: if everyone's poor, who are you gonna rob?
No, but like there are rich people in Zimbabwe and Botswana. There are a lot of rich people there.
Yeah, but
the thing is,
are they like across the road from someone who's?
Zimbabwean president. The difference between Zimbabwe and us is that we don't have a budget for building jails, man. We're not going to jail. You're too much of to feed a criminal. You think it was saying you the Zimbabwe accent? You think we'll put a budget to feed the criminal?
Yeah. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is that because there's such a strong dictator or ruler over
Yeah,
there?
remember, Mugabe deploys the soldiers, not policemen, whenever there's
Yeah.
those
So
electoral
the
things.
same thing was in the Gambia
In the
when
pictures in Zimbabwe, you see
yeah,
soldiers whipping people with shambox. You don't see policemen.
yeah.
You know, with the
The same
military,
thing was,
people listen.
Musanda, the same thing was in the Gambia when we had the dictator Jammeh and all that stuff. These criminals will be punished if they do something. They will be sent to the worst prison right away. So everybody feared committing the law, and it's such a small country as well. Soon as he's gone, everything's gone haywire. Robbing, stabbings are all picking up and starting in the Gambia and all that stuff. People are robbing, stabbing, killing, and all that stuff. Nobody cares anymore. So it's changing because we have a more democratically elected leader or something. You know, while in Zimbabwe, you still have the strong arm of the ZANU PF, I suppose. So maybe that has to do with it as well. I wonder, the more progressive people are, I don't know if they're more daring on those things as well. I want to ask a question. Why it matters? What's your opinion on wokeness or freedom of speech as well? What's you guys' opinions on that? Freedom of speech and wokeness, and
let me tackle wokeness first, because this is some of it I get, some of it is just a bit of don't fall for the bait, as I think you said that, because what woke is code for anything that's non-white straight male nowadays. So when we talk about wokeness, and I gave an example on a stream I did beforehand where Game of Thrones, I don't know if you watch Game of Thrones, but there's a prequel to it that's coming out next week that I'm looking forward to.
Right.
And on the trailer, they had a black person who was a Targaryen. Now, Targaryens have blonde hair, blue eyes, so typically they're gonna be white people.
Yeah.
Looks as if they got a black person there, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, it's woke! It's woke! It's woke! It's woke!" I'm like, fair enough, okay, fine. But when you peel back the layers, what are they telling you? They're telling you that anything that's not white, that's not a man or straight, is something. It's not normal. It's something off. It's something different.
So who? Hold on a second. Who are they telling that to, or who is telling us that? Is it the showmakers or the people who are against it, or something?
The people who are against it.
Okay.
So the fans of the show, they're unhappy because it's how can a black person be in that position? It's same with other TV shows where they have a black person there. Oh my god, how can a black person be there? And why on the face of it, you're like, okay,
don't you think that's going to backfire on blacks? You're right. But I actually, not to say because I'll never be against a black man progressing and whatnot, but I once gotten into trouble with a bunch of black Americans, I guess, when I said it's weird when the new film Love and Thunder where they had a black Asgardian there. I said I felt that was a little bit weird. So I do find
I will explain my point of view on that.
Now, why did you think that was weird? Why do you think that was weird? Is that because you don't feel
black Asgardian? I mean, isn't that Norse mythology? What is a black person doing?
Let me put my sense.
I get that, but they're copying Norse mythology. That is not part of my religion. I'll get it. Maybe if it was Egypt, which is where I come from, but that's not my identity. No people from the north have ever seen a black person. I'm just saying if it was real. Zeus, Odin, they've never seen a black person.
Masanda, this is the trick. This is the trick now, because again, on the face of it, this is where I'm like, I agree. But let's flip it around. They can play Egyptians. Charlton Heston played Moses. Christian Bale played Moses in the new Egyptian story. They're white people. So it's interesting how they can play Persians, they can play Egyptians. Hell, they can even play Africans, except for sub-Saharan Africans, where they're like, okay, we can't be that stupid. They can play, they can be in China, they can be in Japan. So they can happily be versatile when they make the films that they make. But when you're there, oh no, that can't be real, even though it's all fiction.
That's a point too.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to be against it because obviously it's a black person trying to prove point forward. I'm just saying, personally, for me, maybe it's something that's ingrained in me, but I just really find that a little bit weird.
But Masanda, you're right. Masanda,
how many roles would you say are very extreme? Like, you said Moses, right? Oh, because there were Arabs. Moses was an Arab or something. What was he?
People believe Moses was an African, a Jew, but people believe he was black.
Yeah. Okay.
like I said, I mean,
Well,
Right.
again,
what I, what I say.
you laugh now, but again, people did migrate. I mean,
No,
this is
no, no. Maybe I mean, look, bro. Maybe he was a black. I mean, I'm sure that's what you the attachment is. What I'm saying is, at the end of the day, right? I do feel like this is gonna backfire on us when they make a white Black Panther. I'm telling you, this all integrating and why they're gonna be like, since we've been doing this for you, they're gonna have more characters where even in a poorly black film that's supposed to have purely black people, you'll have more white people being played in it. Secondly, I mean, it's expected a lot what's happening because it's not really our media. Like, because the more I think about it, right? How many films do you actually know that are black and have a full black cast? And even if they have a black cast, have a feminine black
Let me
woman.
let me
Have you
say
ever
this.
noticed how every black woman in a white owned media outlet is always this masculine or ready to fight and whatever, which is something I'm not saying that they don't exist, but I think, no, I'm sure majority of African women are not masculine. And let's exclude Nigeria for now, and maybe some Western African country. But majority of African women are not this hyper, I want to always get a gun and kill and whatnot, right? So this is, I do feel like the thing about always integrating and stuff and having people of other cultures mix and stuff makes other people write your identity for you for most part. I just think like that's why I say it's gonna backfire because you're just gonna have more people are writing your identity for you because
Yeah.
it's all white outlet. Yeah.
It does denote a sense of ownership. I tend to feel like it would be interesting if they made an all black cast or people of Norse mythology or the Roman generals or something like that, all black,
Yeah,
and
that was
let's see the reaction of the racist as well when it's all black instead of, because what it usually is,
oh
right?
yeah, my God. So they're trying to sorry, Doc. So they're trying to put into a young black mind as like, yo, if you like cartoons and all this shit, understand that it's normal for just you alone to live in this world. So now more black kids, when they want to create fictional characters, they're always going to include themselves as the minority there, where everyone
Yeah,
else is white. Or at least
it's
that's what they're going to expect. That's what it is. That's what it's doing.
It's a sense of ownership, like as if you don't have your own history, that the role you play in society is kind of like a minor secondary role as well to all this stuff. As if there's plenty of African history out there. Of course, the not top blockbuster movies are being made, but we have our own history as well in Africa, and we live our own lives as well. But to be always portrayed in this, or to be included in this and minoritized, to be included as minority, that which is a bit different, it kind of sets a different tone, why it matters. I guess
Yeah,
that's
it
it
programs the
does.
mind.
It
It does
does.
program the mind a little bit. Yeah, that's the thing. They're
100%.
trying
And
to.
this is why, Masanda, when you said it's a bit weird, I'm like, that's the reason why, because propaganda is real on the media. It programs the mind that you can't be in this, you have to be in this. You can only play if you're in any sort of role, it's a minor role, and usually a beggar, you're usually a traveler, you're usually something of that ilk to justify having somebody of a darker hue there, as opposed to being an actual upstanding, well-mannered, meaning person in the role. Even, and you know what kills me? Even going back to Black Panther, which is pretty much I don't say all black cast, but pretty much is. White, a lot of people are using it as a using the word Wakanda is almost like a using the N word in some places, because they're saying that we can't even build a technological advanced society civilization that's African based. So a lot of people I'm hearing are saying, "Oh, why don't you go back and build Wakanda?" Ha 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 ha. You see what I'm saying? So even things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know why black people ever get offended when white people say that. And okay, I do know, but I think the biggest reason is that black people have always been taught who to look up to and not really look up to the people that put white people there. Majority of black people really need to look up to white tyrants and look up how they put white people where they are. The Hitler, the John Rhodes, although yes, he did hurt you, but I'm just saying he's a tyrant. Even Genghis Khan. The reality is, none of these people that were building these countries of theirs gave a fuck what an African think of them. An African could have came to them and said, "You're a shithole, pale chicken-looking ass white person, whatever." They'll be like, "Fuck that! I'm trying to take your resources." Black people, sadly, I feel like we give so much. We give so much grace to white people when they say, "What does Africa benefit the world?" Why does Africa have to benefit someone why why do Africans have to benefit the people that put them in chains?
I
You
mean,
know, I never hear an African ever ask that question. Like me, I have to build something to make you, my fucking opposition, happier. It will make more sense if actually the white person say, "What have you built for yourself?" For most times, instead of "What have you benefited the world as Africans?" I don't give a fuck about benefiting anything. I'm talking about if I'm a real, authentic African, you care about yourself and your people and build within. Fuck the insults and whatnot. You don't deserve anything from me. I want you all to die for ugly shit. That is
I
how I
mean,
think most Africans think. Yeah.
I mean that's a bit harsh in my opinion. I mean, yeah,
I'm saying to a person who says that because there's a
all right,
racist
yeah, I
Jew,
hear you, I hear you.
and I said that to him, like this only because the black Americans are just crying. Oh, how can you say that you white people you don't? I'm like, bro, I don't look. I'm not like this niggas. I'm not. I'm gonna say this now and get off your panel. I don't look for affirmative whatever. And you're a fucking Jew. He was a white Jew, and he got offended out of shitting on white people because obviously Jews see themselves as white. And I told him as it is. The reality is, Africa owes you nothing. In fact, Africa should be taking away more things instead of being offended about how you're not benefiting white society. Because that's what your question is. What have you built to benefit us? When we all know they didn't go to Africa to benefit Africans. They went to Africa to take. And in fact, if it wasn't for the sun and they could live in Africa, Africans would be dead. So you are asking somebody who was about to commit genocide to you, how are you beneficial to me? You understand the psyche of that. You are asking somebody who's willing, who could have possibly, because he's done it before in other countries, wiped you out of the planet Earth. How do you benefit me? What the hell am I thinking? It's like there's no way in hell you will ever hear blood asking, why don't Crips, how does a Crip benefit me? How does a gangster disciple benefit? What's this other one?
But again,
Uh,
it's but
yeah,
Masami,
what?
again, it's a way of trying to, again, this is why we need our own propaganda. It's a way of trying to minimize impact in the world in terms of inventions, medicine, intelligence, in terms of society, civilization. Oh, it's just a way of trying to say, what have you guys done in the world that we should care about? And that's it. Outside of being validated by, let's be honest, other groups of people, this isn't just about white people, just any other group of people. What have you done that makes you special? What have you done that actually we even care about? Why do we even care about you? Whereas you need to be validated with us. That's how they say it. And that's why, again, we need our own propaganda. And you're right, we do need to be insular. We do need to work on ourselves first and not care about other people. And only then we can sort of branch out.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's good. That's good. At least we're all on the same page as well. For me, it anti-wokeness. You addressed the bit of wokeness that addressed representation on media and all that stuff. But
Yep.
what about the wokeness that's like conscious, consciousness? That when people say, "Oh, this person now a conscious woke person," and they do the quotation marks and all that stuff, it's like as if they're telling you, you think you know it all now and all that kind of stuff. It's a way of like pushing back down on you choosing to be aware of your society. It's like a pushback down. You understand what I mean?
I
It
hear
seeps
you.
into go on.
And I think this goes back to conversation about how far is too far, because you're right. The reason why civilization is tolerant is because people who are conscious and woke have decided this is what's best. So I always find it interesting when people say, "Oh, things were always better back in the day." I'm like, "No, they weren't. You just didn't hear about it because people were told to shh, don't complain, get on with things." And the old guard, the people who actually benefited from the old ways were happy because guess what? They're the ones who were benefiting. So I'll say this: unless you don't speak up about something, no one's going to ever know your pain.
No.
And the problem is when people know about your pain, this is where you realize a lot of people don't care and just want you to go back in the box or the hole that you came from. So when I hear that word conscious and woke, there are some things I'm like, okay. But then again, I'm like, well, we can only get to a certain position if we actually know about what people are going through. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that you completely you articulated what I wanted to say better. So okay, there's that side of it, and there's the side of anti or free speech in which they also advocate for the ability to just say whatever they want, express their power in a way as well. And because they're in a position of power, they can say whatever they want. As if, because they used to say free speech was given for people to have the opportunity to criticize the government without being killed and all that stuff. Nowadays, it's moved into an area in which if I'm free to speak what I want. If you get offended, that's not my fault and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like free speech. It's freedom to offend in a way as well.
There it is. That's the difference, and that's what they want, and that's the difference. It's not people. For me, freedom of speech is where you're having for me a genuine conversation about something, and somebody is offended and wants you to shut up about it. That for me is where I'm like, no, he has a right to be able to express his opinion, especially if you ask somebody a question about something. Where people get confused, or where I get a bit, is where people go out their way, it seems, to offend other people, and then say, I have freedom of speech to be able to go out my way to offend someone. I give an example of, even when it comes to certain religious aspects, people know what offends certain groups. We do. So you going out your way to say this and that about certain other people's faiths or ethnicity or culture, you're not using freedom of speech. What you're using really is you're trying to offend somebody under the auspices of freedom of speech. Now, there are places like in London where you have Speaker's Corner, where that is more of a case of you really do have carte blanche, and that's a protected area, supposedly, where you can really just, but for the most part, when it comes to freedom of speech, like you said, people just want the ability to offend and not have any recourse. But I'm like this: if you have the freedom to say what you want to say, then equally people have the freedom to say what they want to say. You see what I mean? But when that happens, they don't like it. Oh, it's cancel culture. But
you're right. You're right. I think Rees Mogg came out saying that people should be free to offend as well. People he came out agreeing with that. Say it's moved away from freedom of speech as in freedom to offend. It's your choice to be offended or not, if you're offended or not as well. You know what I mean?
But people say that, don't they? They're like, oh, it's people's choice whether they're offended or not. I'm like, not really true. I mean, if you're going to go out your way to literally disrespect somebody and call out freedom of speech, then come on now. People are human beings at the end of the day. There's a way of saying anything, isn't there? I know sometimes you get a bit harsh, but come on. This is the thing what kills me. I think is a case where there's two things. People do look for offense on some place. I agree. But yeah, freedom of speech, it shouldn't be a reason to incite. It shouldn't be to go out your way to purposely offend something and someone where you know it's going to offend. I mean, why would you do that? It's like burning the Quran. Why would you burn the Quran and say that's freedom of speech? It's not. You know what you're trying to do. And
somebody articulated it better today on Navarro Media or something. Navarro, I don't know. Articulated better. I just couldn't. But in any case, as well, I think it's good for us to be conscious of this. Why it matters. But sometimes, I think there is this need to kind of jump straight into conservative talking points as well, and we follow along with that narrative without actually looking at how negative effect it may have on us as well, or people who are minority, or people who are going through the plight as well. So we jump straight on that, and without even realizing as well. So some people who advocate for so much freedom of speech as well. Look at your position and see who is saying what, and if it benefits you at that time.
I hear you. Right now I'm going to shut down the stream just because we've been going for 2.5 hours, and it's getting a bit late over here. So I'm going to shut down the stream. So Darth, Masanda, and obviously KB, I know you were here. Appreciate you all for coming on. Any last couple of thoughts or any last little bits you both want to add into the convo?
Let me say something. Musanda, you surprise me sometimes, Musanda. I be listening to you on Dr. Kezo's channel and all that kind of stuff. Right? I listen to you and I wonder what's going on here and all that stuff. But sometimes I guess when it comes to South Africa, you get really passionate, and it's almost like you love the white people over there and all that stuff. But then when it comes to people externally or global geopolitically, your stance is completely different. So
What do you mean I love white people? What have I said?
The talking point when it comes to Dr. Kezo's channel, it almost sounds like we love the white man.
What is my talking point? Make an example. Tell me one example that made you think that. And don't hold it.
I can't bring up an example, but you seem to have that kind of theme of the white man did us great, and we black man cannot run shit, and all that kind of stuff.
What do you guys say this matter? No, okay, not really you guys. Obviously, that those that do listen to me, like Wunak Mizen, but you and Joe. Well, you once asked this, but then I think later on they realized that no, I think the problem, right, with when people listen to me, they hear the criticism and think I'm defending whites. That's
Yeah,
why even when I asked you that question, I asked you, why did I say specifically that made you think I
yeah,
defended white? That
yeah,
specific statement.
yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't even tell me the specific statement. You'll be like, well,
No, because
sometimes, you know,
no one can bring up something just off the cuff like that.
behavior, docile Bantu behavior, and now you perceive that as pro-white, right? And that's
Mm.
something that I feel like it's one of those things that you notice a lot with the gender wars with the Black Americans, where it's now you're bashing, right? I think there's a part of what
Musanda, I hear you, but one day I will catch you on that, and I will come on the panel and actually get you to properly. I'll address that. And all that. Right now, I can't bring up, but I will listen. I will continue listening.
no, no, okay. When was this? You said that I defended
No,
white
no, no.
South Africa.
It's look. It's not a case where I can bring up a situation because you've been on the panel multiple times.
But
You've said so many things. But it's just it has a theme. You understand? It has a theme that sounds like maybe as you just said it right now. You're being very critical as well. You're being very critical to what you call it as docile Bantu behavior as well. But I think there's times where you advocated for black people having less children or not even procreating.
Oh,
There's
yeah. At
times
least
when you said that. Yeah,
tell me what I meant by that. Okay, cool. Right?
yeah.
Because we have to analyze what's being said. It's not that I'm just saying people should not have kids. That's not even what I'm just preaching. I'm saying people who cannot afford to have children should not have kids. Now let's look at the result of that. The result of that is growing a Boko Haram army.
Uh,
These people don't get new entrances from nowhere. But nobody wants to analyze that. These people, Boko Haram is still, and all this, you can kill the leader, but why is it that it's still thriving and growing as it comes? You think a good kid who grew up in a good household with a mommy and daddy that can afford security, afford basic health care for the kid, will have to can join Boko Haram? How does a kid end up in that militant group? That's what I'm saying. You know,
uh,
but we don't want to analyze this. We want to talk about anything else. Like people just happen to wake up and become poor and now have to join Boko Haram. No, that's not what just happens. Things
right,
happen. Yeah, that's a
right,
fact. You
right.
know.
But okay, I get what you're saying and all that stuff. But since the fact is that most black people are poor anyway, especially in South Africa or something. So would you say they should roll out such a policy? Don't have kids as long as
What
you're
is the
poor, you can't
benefit
raise
of
them.
having? What is the benefit? Let's ask this question. What is the benefit of having a highly populated country? And I won't be long, Wim. Don't worry. What is the benefit of having a highly populated country if, for starters, you don't have enough jobs in that country? Secondly, you have a problem with the high levels of crime when people are unemployed, and thirdly, when those people, let's say it's so highly populated, they don't know where to actually
Yeah,
find ends
but
meet.
Musanda, these are things that can be addressed politically if the political will was there, or you understand. This can be politically addressed.
Okay, okay, but
There are problems you are mentioning. There are problems you are
the
mentioning,
problem
and
with what
problems
you're
can
saying,
be fixed. But
the problem with what you're
to
saying
roll out,
is that
decrease your
you need
population.
other people to change. You yourself, no, let's talk about what you as an individual can control. I cannot control if it is going to be in the office until 2020, 2060. I can't control that. The thing is, you are presuming that you can somehow change the political climate you live in. I'm saying, let's look into it as where we are. And
Yeah.
for the past years, is it getting better for the people where they are? That's
Okay.
what I'm saying. Why do you think most of Europe is not having kids today? Because most of Europe, whites, for most times, understand that rich whites will not care about their cries. That's why they just get poor and give up because they know Trump, whatever, will not care about me. I'm really, my white card is out now, right? They know they can't rely on sympathy. I think with black people, there's this idea and hopeism of saying, I can somehow use my sympathy and my story and sadness of saying, you must unite and what try to change the political figure. Even though you know that the politics that you guys say is funded by Europe, the politics that you guys say, does not listen to its citizens, will easily kill its citizens to stay in power. There's this all multifaceted factors. And I'm not saying these things won't
So
change.
Musanda, what's the benefit? What's the benefit what's the benefit when all these ills you have
Children not
mentioned?
having kids they can afford. I'm not saying people don't have kids. I'm saying you should be able to afford them. I'm not saying don't have kids.
When all these ills are addressed, because they are ills that can be addressed politically as well. We've seen examples. Musanda, we've seen examples where they've been addressed, perhaps in the West and other countries. When all these ills are addressed, what's the benefit of a larger population then? What's the benefit of that?
Right. Sorry, guys. I have to just cut it just because again, I just kind of want to. This is definitely going to go somewhere else.
Hold on, Musanda. Look, I'm not coming at you or something. I will come at you at some point, but I just decided to just say I kind of see a theme in which you're going. But listening to you today, I know you fancy yourself. You like to analyze things and think critically about things. So I don't have a problem with that. Like I said, I listened to you today and you spoke very well, and I think you may have a point. So don't take it offensively.
I'm not. I'm just trying to prove my point specifically, and this is the last I'm going to say, women, then you close.
Right.
The benefit of having a controlled population, because I know a country that's done this, like Botswana, for example. Most of their labor, first of all, was also Europe, the Brits, and then obviously as their own population grew, they started telling them to go back, right? And so that they stabilize their numbers. They've highly stabilized their numbers. So now, damn near all Botswana that are born there can in a way get a job there. They can, right? You don't have a lot of job deficits like you do have in South Africa. The problem with having a large population where you have low labor index, like majority of people are not as educated and cannot contribute into the productive system of the world. So you don't have enough petroleum engineers in Nigeria to build their own alternative to Shell or whatever. When you have this high level of population yet a low labor index, like they're not as skilled, what you do there is now have a dependency state, and also you have a dependency state that not just is dependent on its government but also international government, because now you need the other international world to feed you. Hence why you see African countries multiple times going to the IMF. You rarely see any Japan or whatever begging IMF money to take care of its people, right? This is how the whole foreign aid thing comes in and make you dependent, make you actually believe that you are dependent on Europe and not the other way around. The advantage of having a controlled population is that one, you're not dependent on another state. It's important, and this is the conversation started with, that you're not dependent on other states. I'm copying this from the apartheid. I'm copying this from economies that have worked. When you don't depend on the US and what, you can continue apartheid and hurt all the blacks as much as you want. SA was sanctioned by Europe, yet the dollar was still the same value as the rand by that time, even with the sanctions, because the Bulls created a self-dependency state, and they had low population. They had less population than the majority of blacks. That's what I'm saying. So, and they were beating them, right? They were beating them for most part because they had the technological advantage. They made sure their children were the engineers. So instead of just going buns in with a gun, they used tractors that could control robotically by the electrical engineer for the bulls, right? Technological advantage, that's what wins the war, not numbers. Numbers is easy. I can just throw an HIV virus or whatever to wipe out your race. Because they're low IQ, they're not gonna realize that. I know you hate that word, but they're not gonna realize that there's a virus. Like, how are you gonna defend yourself against a virus with with people that are not that skilled in chemical engineering to make the antivirus? How are you gonna defend against that? Their numbers don't help with anything. What you need is educated people, and I'm done.
Right. You need the educated few as well. And okay, right, Musanda. No worries and all that kind of stuff. Let's call it a night for today as well.
100%. But no, that's it's actually very, very, very interesting conversation about should people in poverty have kids and the benefit of having a mass population and low skilled work and etc. like that. So that could be another stream, definitely.
Okay, that could be another stream, that could be another stream and all that stuff. I'll prepare, Musanda. I'll prepare and all that kind of stuff.
But thank you both for coming on to the live stream. Your input has been extremely valued. Again, KB, big ups to yourself who came on the stream. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thank you for the people listening on the playback. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe if you are new.
post this. Watch this video and all that stuff, right? See what you think of it.
Oh, this one. What I'll do as well, I'll put it into the main chat as well. So this is, it was Putin, into he was speaking about something.
Yeah, he was just giving his analysis of the world and geopolitical analysis of how the world is and all that stuff. You understand?
No, he on my final closing, Putin did say something about Africans, and he said that Africa is just a cemetery for Africans. He said an African, if he's rich, he'll move his kids to like Europe. He will be educated in maybe like Canada. He'll have healthcare in France. He'll have homes in Switzerland or banks in Switzerland. And then, but when he's dead, he'll get himself buried in the homeland in Africa. Now, apparently, he didn't say that, but that's what has been credited to.
Isn't that true though? That's kind of true, isn't it? Like, Musanda, what do you think? Is that true or false?
Sorry, I wasn't listening. I thought you were about to close. What did you ask again, Wim?
It was the last point I make was Vladimir Putin. He said this about Africa: it's a cemetery for Africans. An African, if he's got money, he would send his kids to private education in Europe. He'll have healthcare in France, homes and banks in Switzerland. But have and then when he finally dies, he'll again get buried in Africa.
I mean, I've read some people say he said that. I never saw it myself. Plus, I can't hear. I said, he said it on Russian, but yeah, I mean, I've heard of. Oh, do I believe in it? Yeah, I think a lot do. I mean, maybe not in SA. I think most South Africans tend to get treated and die in SA. But I guess for Zimbabwe, I guess, or other African countries, maybe there's some truth in what they say. And I think it's true. Like, look at Ramaphosa. He kept his money in dollars. So I don't know. I guess it's true. A lot of Africans really don't have faith in their own government. That says a lot.
You're quite moderate on this one, on your response on this one, Musanda. I thought you would go all hub and all that stuff. That's completely true.
Why do you
response on this one?
Well, we may not have time for all of that. We may not have time for all of that because I do want to close the stream. But again, thank you everyone for listening on the playback. Thank you both. Thank you everyone for coming on the stream. But yeah, hopefully I have another live stream lined up again this week. So make sure you got the bell, everything tuned up. But yeah, thanks everyone. And have a good
on the back chat, I sent a link to African Aid. Maybe you can look it up. Not here. I'm just saying. Just on aid was made by Zimbabweans. She's talking about how aid helps Africans. And also follow the channel. I follow the guy who posted that. He's a very smart guy. Look him up. Penwa. Yeah.
I'll put it in I'll put the link in the main chat just so again on the playback people can
we should have Lidge on this channel as well. He's got great
very you should I'll send him a link to this thing. Yeah, he's a very smart guy. You like him. He's an Ethiopian.
Of course, we don't want this channel to go completely dusty as well.
Fight a lot. You fight with a lot of East Africans, right?
Yeah. We don't want it to go too dusty. We want to still keep the level of discourse and all that stuff. But Lidge is a great contribution as well.
All right.
I think he allows himself to go dusty, but it's a great contribution usually.
Fair enough. All right, cool. Thanks everyone. Thanks for contributions, and we're out of here. See you everyone.
All right. Cheers.